it
Welcome.
actually comes with its own intro music, right? Like
Oh,
that logo. There is intro music that plays with it. I clipped the end of the that song or whatever, our theme song,
yes, yeah.
uh, which is actually what's it called when it's like free music or
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
and
Yeah,
somebody's just like,
copyright free or something.
yeah, that one.
You're basically just trying to avoid getting sued or having your shows stopped, you know?
Yeah, and if that individual who made that song ever got upset, which I couldn't find it anywhere else,
Hmm.
but if he got upset and
Right?
started collecting on the use, I would, I would be pretty upset because I've made it a point,
Yeah, but how do
obviously,
you collect
to
on nothing? Like, that's,
right.
you
Yeah, I
know.
mean, well, it creates ads, and then those ads,
Oh, yeah.
which I've done like I've gone back to all our old episodes and clipped off anything that was causing ads,
Mm.
and so I went through, and any time that it all of a sudden said copyright strike or whatever, not necessarily a strike, but there's a copyright
Yeah, it's a warning, and then
whatever.
they're going to add ads and, all that stuff.
Yeah, I went through
You
and I
are,
went ahead and cut it out so that we wouldn't have ads. Except for
oh,
like,
yeah.
there's a couple where it did for the Mike and Manitoba specials or whatever, the Mike and Manitoba series where it has the X Files music. I could not get around that. That one,
No, it's
absolutely.
integral to the show.
Yeah. So what were we talking about before? Do we want to jump right into that then, real quick before we get
Oh,
into the real meaty stuff? Because I know you've got some stuff. I've got some stuff. You
yeah,
got some
everybody has stuff
boomsies.
this week.
Yeah.
It's crazy,
But I do want to complain because you mentioned it before we went live.
Yeah, so
The
just should I explain to the audience how my inadvertent
yeah, please set me up for my rant.
yeah, let's set up Tom's rant. So Tom was a victim tonight. Okay, guys. I want to let you know that Tom was my victim tonight. It's not something we generally share, our little banter before the show starts, where the magic truly happens. Okay. Am I right? Okay.
You know what's
So,
the worst part is nothing of use happens during
mhm.
that time. It's not like
No.
we're drumming up the stuff for the show or running over like, hey, let's talk about real quick what we're going to talk about. It's
Yeah, no.
it's hey, let's just bitch about whatever we want. I even said in the chat that it was we were ripping on Mike in Manitoba. So
Yeah, yeah, and that probably would have been more interesting to everybody if we were, because rather than that, I think we went from Boba Fett's show sucks to uh, Kevin Smith lore on both
mhm.
of our ends to then just before this all started, Tom just sees my head down like this and hears maybe sees some light misting,
I didn't see
and
the
so
mist, so don't worry.
oh,
I
okay,
didn't see
all
any
right.
of that.
So then, of course, as any man in that position might, be, he had a lot of questions. So he was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm spraying my vagina because it's unclean." No, uh,
That's that would have been a
but
better excuse, I think.
yeah, that would have been a better excuse for what I was doing. I use little Dr. Scholl's sprays so I can keep my feet nice and dry in my very comfortable Minnetonka slippers, because
I
we sit here for a while and I get sweaty, and so
you
that's
do.
and then I do that, and so then that's when Tom said, "Well, I'm glad you mentioned it because there's a doctor lady talking about vaginal sprays or something." I'm not even sure if that's who he wants to bitch about now, because he was thinking
It's
about
a
one
little bit of
thing, we were
both,
talking
yeah.
about another thing, but that's the setup. Somehow me using foot spray set up Tom to want to rant about doctors, lady doctors, TV lady doctors, and vaginal spray, I
Yeah.
think.
That's how it played
Possibly,
out. That's
yeah.
how it played out in my mind. What I'm imagining, well, at first, of course, I was imagining. It's funny how the brain works, and it kind of just, I have this, like all over the place brain. You're
Mm-hmm.
spraying. I'm thinking he's spraying because there's a commercial, right? Where this
Mm-hmm.
lady doctor, she's talking about, and I don't know if she's a doctor or not. I assume she is because That's what it says on the TV, or she introduces herself. But in reality, you know, like once you reach a certain age, you can introduce yourself as doctor, and people aren't going to question it, right? And I encourage you to do this in your daily routine. Just as you're walking around and you bump into somebody and you're talking, you're like, "Oh, hi, excuse me," you know, and you're after a little bit where you might introduce yourself, say, "I'm so sorry, Dr. Tom Miller," and you shake their hand, you know, and see if it passes. Because, and I'll tell you what, I bet you that it does. I bet you, as long as you're over a certain age, I would say late 20s, early 30s, nobody's going to question it. They might even be like, "Oh, doctor of what?" And you could say whatever. Who cares? You know, "Oh, I have a PhD
strong
in
handshake,
anthropology," or whatever. Yeah, do that and make eye contact. But now this supposed lady doctor, she says she's created this deodorant for your no-no places, I believe is what they even call it on the commercial, where you can spray your feet, or you can spray your vagina or your butt crack. And it won't create yeast infections, and it won't create any kind of issues which might occur when you use certain products in those regions. But that reminded me now, and what's funny is once you explained what it was, I am imagining you spraying like bowling shoes with that spray that kills everything.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
And you know what you need is we know that those sprays kill everything because they use it in bowling alleys. And where is there a filthier place than a bowling alley? It's like the modern world's most obviously spaceport. But you take those sprays and you just hit everything with it real quick, and we get rid of COVID. We're done, right?
You know, I have to say, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think you're onto something, and we should really. This would be a way to save bowling alleys. You know what I mean? Because not only have they fallen out of favor with the you know, because it's hard to, there's Wii bowling, all this kinds of stuff, right? So it's already fallen out of favor. But then you could say this is the safest place there is, and everybody sprayed with. Oh, dude. Yeah, do you remember when there was a viral video of a guy who just stood outside of a shopping mall or some kind of grocery store, and he just was spraying people with like bug spray, and they thought it was for COVID? Yeah, just a guy at the front of the store, and he would spray them with some kind of spray. I don't remember if it was bug spray, but it certainly wasn't something that was killing COVID, right? And they just let him. They were like, "Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. You know, maybe watch the eyes. You know, thank you." And no one complained. No one said, "Stop spraying me." Nobody. And so we could revive that. We could even have like all-in bowling pins when you walk through the door. Just the bowling pins turn in and spray on you like a car wash. You know what I'm saying? And it could be like this themed thing. Yes, exactly. And you could do it at the lanes. You know, you get the clean lane. I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities. There's corporate sponsorship.
I wish I could take credit. I was just like the foundation, but you've turned it into something that we can use.
Oh, yeah. And dude, it's just insane. I had something else, but this is so big, I've lost it. I don't even remember now.
Well, let me, because I had to write it down. This is my thing now. Okay, I write stuff down so that I don't forget. Now, this lady doctor on TV reminded me of another lady doctor on TV. And I don't know if you've seen this commercial. I know you have, Jerry, because you mentioned it, which is surprising to me because the sort of commercials that I see on travel TV or whatever, Destination America and shit, are not the same commercials that play elsewhere because nobody watches the channels that I watch. So nobody in their right mind is paying for these commercials. Now, they have this lady, the chick who played Blossom. Some of you older folks will remember Blossom. You younger folks will remember her as, I guess she's on Sheldon or
yes,
Big Bang Theory. She's
I
the
believe.
chick. I don't know who she plays, but
she's Stinky Fart Butts, I think is what her name is.
I believe that is her name because
that's what,
she's like crossing over into this other commercial. No, she comes onto the thing and she says, "Hi, I'm so and so. I don't play anybody. I don't just play somebody brainy on TV. I'm an actual neuroscientist." And then she goes on to sell gummy vitamins for brain health or whatever. And I wish I could be excited for her. I do. I wish I could be excited for the product. But all I can think of is I'm like, okay, this is the chick who used to play Blossom, and for as a teenager, as a young teen or whatever, or preteen or whatever. I don't remember how old she's. I think we're the same age as she is.
I think that's right.
And she
was born in 19. Actually, I have to correct you. She's older. I'm looking at her IMDb because I had to remember her name. Her name is Mayim Bialik.
Okay.
And another bit of fun fiction, or fun fact, I should say.
Might as well be.
It might as well be. While she's going out on television, on these commercials going, I don't just play a smart person, I'm a neuroscientist. At the same time, if you saw that commercial on Fox, you would then also see a commercial for her new show, where her name is Kat. She's a cat lady who lives alone and acts as a dumb spinster in her, what is, I think, supposed to be 30s. But of course, we know she's older than both of us by quite a bit.
What is she? Is she like 45, 50?
Well, let's see. So if I'm going to be 42, and I was born in 80, then she's as old as potentially 47.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a little old to be getting your... Well, okay, it's not a little old to be getting your degree. I don't think you're ever too old to get your degree, but or any degree, especially an advanced degree, like a doctorate of some sort, or a medical doctorate. And but I would say it's a little old to be getting your degree and then bragging about it on TV. Now, if you're like 28 and you're finishing that program and you're a neuroscientist, I think that's grounds for bragging. I think you're allowed to be a little braggadocious. But when you're almost 50, pushing 50, literally pushing 50, and your accomplishments are Blossom, being the less hot girl on Blossom. Because I remember I used to have a big crush on Six when I was a young'un. Right. And then also being on Big Bang Theory, which is a show that I've never watched, but the jokes that I've heard from it and the clips that I've seen from it were not funny. Like it wasn't even enough for me to roll over in bed and look at the TV and be like, what show is this? Right. But if those are your accomplishments,
what other shows are there where there literally are clips out there where they remove the laugh track to prove how unfunny the show is? There are actually clips of the show on the internet where they remove the laugh tracks, and then there's inevitably some video blogger going, show me where it's funny, show me where it's funny, show me where, like just getting uncontrollably angry, like show me where this is fucking, just getting furious,
See, and I wish I could. I'm with those guys because I don't know. I thought so. And this reminds me of when I was, when I found out that what's his name, George Lopez was a comedian. I didn't know he was a comedian until I was probably 30. How old am I now? Until I was probably about 30. And we saw something, and it was I don't remember what it was, but I said, oh, what's he supposed to be? Or like, why is he in this movie? Is this like when Rob De Niro was in Meet the Fockers, and he was like, tough guy, always serious. Now he's in the comedy, and he's just trying to flex his, spread his wings or whatever. and my wife was like, no, George Lopez is a comedian. And I said, no, he's not. Stop it. This is not. Yeah. You're not a comedian either with this joke. This is not a funny joke. Like, and this is like after Balls of Fury, which again I thought was one of those movies where that might have been the movie I was thinking of. But like, I'm like, no. George Lopez, he's never been funny. Like, this is not. That was my quote. I think to her was George Lopez was never funny. But let me finish this. Her saying, I'm a doctor. I'm a real life neuroscientist. And her first move was to come back to TV to talk about some kind of like hokey gummy vitamin or whatever that we know doesn't work. But instead of, if somebody comes on just because they have a degree in something and they say that I am X profession, that typically aligns with that degree. Like at the end of this summer, I will not go around saying, well, I myself am a theologian. I won't go around saying that just because I have a Master of Divinity. Like, that is not something that I would have to be in a position.
Can you say instead that you have, could you just have like a cape that says Master of Divinity instead? It
says Divine Master, and I wave it at people or whatever. And
by the way, secondly,
some kind of smoke powder of some sort.
Every time you get out of your car, and it has to be, even if you have a cool car, it has to be an embarrassing car. You have to get out of like a 1997 Dodge Caravan with at least one hubcap missing, right? and then you get out with all the and then you make your kids throw the smoke bombs,
Well,
before you get out of the
me.
car.
Yeah, and roll.
Right, they get out. Right,
the
exactly.
carpet, yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. I think, and then secondly, you have to promise me that you go to at least a few snobby areas, and unprompted, unrelated, mention that you have a master's.
I'll turn it into the new vegan.
Dude, yeah, it's because there's this thing where, like, when I watch, there's this a couple of creators that I watch, and they'll like watch someone freaking the fuck out, about a supposedly important issue to them or something, and they'll just stop the video, and of course it's like a blog, right? But they'll stop the video and go, "Sir, this is a Wendy's," right? And I'm just imagining you drive through, picking up some food, and then going, "Yes, I understand. Or no, sir, may I help you? You want some food today?" "Yes, I would." As a master of, just
as a master of divinity, card-carrying theologian,
right.
And that's what I'll do is I
would like a double cheeseburger.
I'll walk into the room like she did, right? I think she was holding a coffee mug. I'll see the commercial again 40 times tomorrow, I'm sure, because that's all I ever watch. There's that fucking channel. Now I'll walk in with a coffee mug and say, I don't just play someone stupid on a podcast. I'm also a master of divinity, right? But that's what I'll do.
You should get a coffee mug with the print of your degree.
It'll be a picture of my actual diploma on it, and then of me holding it and being handed to it, and somebody also like in a word bubble that says you are now technically a master of divinity. It makes it sound like I'm a magician of some sort, which I think is probably cooler than
which is where
being
the cape
a
comes in.
Neuroscientist. Yeah, I have. I mean, I think it's part of it. Doctor Strange. That's what I'll go by when I obtain my doctorate. But yeah, she does all this shit, and I'm like, whenever I hear that sort of thing, I'm like, well, then shouldn't you be out doing science, right? Like, if you're an actual neuroscientist, shouldn't you be out doing neuroscience, like, to better the world?
Yeah.
Instead of, well, now I have a better option. I can say, instead of playing a cat lady spinster on the WB, like, is there something better that you can be doing to further the human race than doing non-laugh track young Sheldons or whatever? And so that, I don't know, when you said that bit with the shoe and then the vagina spray and then the doctor lady on TV, like, it just got me going crazy. Now, at least with Natalie Portman, right? Natalie Portman, she got into acting
as a
youngin. Yeah, oh no, there's no doubt about it. But
I mean, I'm just saying, if you're going to compare well-educated, obnoxious Jewish women, you know what I mean?
Both of them are. Except for Blossom is less attractive, obviously.
That's what I'm saying. It's like one's more tolerable, and we know why.
Well, that's why I'm not going to sit here. I don't even know what degree Natalie Portman holds, because she's never come out on a commercial and said, "Hi, not only do I play Queen Amidala. I would never, I wouldn't want to relegate her.
Senator then Queen.
Somehow. Yeah. I wouldn't want to relegate her to that position. No, it was Queen and then Senator, if I recall, right?
Oh, is that?
She became an
senator of the that's right. Yeah.
But she was a young queen, and it was a very short position. I think it's like a 2-year stint that you are the queen of Naboo, or at least that part of Naboo. Okay. And
she has a degree in psychology, by the way.
Oh, see, that's even better, right? She didn't come out and say, not only was I the queen of Naboo and also a senator representing the great, representing the well, I mean, it was an entire world, really. But not only am I that, but I'm also in real life a psychologist, right? Or which again, that requires. You could say, hey, I have a degree in psychology. That's one thing. I don't know if she's licensed to practice psychology. So can she come out and say, not only was I the senator appointed to represent my people on Phantom Menace and the accompanying prequels, but I am also a psychologist. Not only may not be able to say that, but now I'm questioning whether or not Blossom can come out and say that she's a neuroscientist. Is there some kind of like bar that you have to pass to be qualified as a neuroscientist? Like I could have a veterinary studies degree, a doctorate in veterinary studies, but I can't necessarily say, hey, or even a nurse, right? You could have a
Oh,
bachelor's
so
of
you're worried
science and
about
a
the doctor.
nurse.
She is Mayim is the Dr. Nick of neuroscience, is what you're worried about. Sounds like.
I don't know. Explain yourself.
Simpsons, Dr. Nick, right?
Oh yeah, is that
So,
the guy? Is that the guy
yeah.
who talks like this?
Hello,
That guy?
everybody. Yeah. So he's not the Dr. Hibbert, who of course also is just as ridiculous. But instead, this one is of course the famously poor bad at his job doctor. And I'm just wondering if that's what you're concerned about. Also, just while you were talking, I looked up not only to see what she had a degree in, but here's a little fun fact. After much thought and consideration, Natalie Portman has decided to return her degree from Harvard. When contacted, Portman was more than happy to clarify her controversial decision. Basically, that degree is associated with intelligence, and I'm not really comfortable with that. I've made some really stupid decisions recently, and rejecting the Genesis Award in Israel just because the freely elected prime minister was going to be speaking there, I took the cake. After that, I was like, finally, I get to give my degree back. It's a big relief. So also, just as a fun fact, because all the Jews do this, her actual name was Natalie Hirschlag, not Portman.
Really? I wonder if so that's the thing with the Jews, is they it just depends on what they're trying to do, right? Whether or not they take their patriarchal name versus their matriarchal name. If they're trying to get citizenship, their dual citizenship, obviously they have to go with the matriarchal side. But if they're trying to do whatever else, I mean, or it just depends on other things. So Natalie, but also it could just be because, what was the name again? Hirschlag. That sounds German.
Hirschlag.
Right?
So Hirschlag.
Oh yeah, that definitely sounds German. Yeah. So
well, no, but just imagine it, right? You're in Thor, right? You're in Thor. There's Chris Hemsworth as Thor with Natalie Hirschlag.
Oh,
and you're like,
yuck. No, I don't even imagine that.
Yeah, no. So that's why they do. It's like Jon Stewart's real name is John Leibowitz.
Yeah, I do remember that one.
You know what I mean? There are reasons why
there's another in Raising Arizona. He says he's like, well, what? It says here that your name is Huffheim, and he's like, yeah. And he's like, why would you have your name? Why does it say such Arizona? And he's like, you ever try to sell furniture with the name Huffheim? Huffheim's Furniture, unpainted Huffheims. So yeah, no, I get it. I totally get it. And especially the Jews, they don't have very cool last names. Very difficult to say without somebody laughing. And one of their letters is literally you have to do multiple. As a matter of fact, I just took a Hebrew class, and many times throughout having to read these passages, I'm like, I feel silly doing this. Like, this is really their language, and I felt bad saying that because this is, of course, the language of God. Right. Presumably the old version of the.
Wouldn't it be crazy if if we've been saying it wrong this whole time?
How
How
so?
Well, just what I mean.
This question.
Well, I mean, you're saying, it's just such a shame.
I am a master of divinity.
Whoa. I guess what I'm saying is you're saying, well, they literally have a letter that's and it's unfortunate, right? And so it's unfortunate, as it is, the language of our God and all this sort of stuff. And I just thought, well, what if we were wrong in pronunciation? Like maybe it was something more akin to, say, Sanskrit or something, where it's a dead language. We're kind of just stabbing in the dark a little bit, right? Maybe that's what it is. And someone, because they may have had an allergy, wherever they were, they had an allergy.
It's something. What it really is something really manly. But the guy with the allergy, he's like, Oh, all right. We're picking on the poor Jews, and I don't mean poor like,
well, no, statistically they're better off than us. Yeah.
I mean, obviously that too, but I know you have some stuff. Let me. There was something I felt like I wanted to say. Maybe no. You know what? I'm gonna piggyback off of your your thing with what I've got here. I think I said what I needed to say with picking on Blossom. I'm over here.
By the
like,
way, do you think it's
shitting
funny?
up. You know, like you're not supposed to shit down in comedy.
That's right.
You're supposed to shit up, and that's what we've
That's
done.
right.
But it's Blossom, and I think of her. I'm like, oh, it's a woman. You know, so technically it is shitting down. Mostly Wave says that there's probably another Natalie Hirschlag in the Actors Guild already.
Oh yeah.
Which doesn't, you know, like you said, they're better off than we are. So there's way too many Natalie Hirschlags in entertainment right now.
That's it. Yeah.
And Thundercock said it was the Israelis. I love all the anti-Semitism in the chat.
Dude, we opened up. I feel like we opened something up there a little bit.
And that's
so.
Okay,
Here, let's go. Let's get ourselves.
I say a lot of pretty terrible things about the Jews. Go ahead, Jerry. Take it away.
Oh well, I was going to say let's.
Down.
Yeah, let's just get a little bit nicer and let's just say, Don says it's just a peanut allergy. Lots of people have those.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So that's what that is. Well, as we
have something,
mentioned,
yeah. I know you've got something special that you've got to do. Are we going to do that before the shot or after? What do we want to do?
Oh, if you want to do the shot, you know what? How about this? We'll do the whoopsies.
Okay.
And then we'll do the shot going into the headline.
Works
you know what I mean?
Me.
That's
the. I'm into
when
it.
you go to see a play, they give you the break in the middle, right? Like that.
Yeah.
So okay.
It's called an intermission, Jerry.
That's right.
Maybe
for
get
those
some
of
culture.
I'm sorry, I don't have a cape. So as mentioned last week, we are instituting a new segment here on the show, and that is This Week in Whoopsies, or Whoopsies of the Week, or Weekly Whoopsies with human whoopee.
Oh, no.
Whoa, whoopsies, right? However you guys want to go with it. But I'm going to choose 3 to 5 cases per week where I'm just going to go, whoa, that's a whoopsies. And Tom and I talked off air. And specifically, we want to occasionally mention, let's say, some personal comeuppance for those who have been prickish about a certain subject we're not supposed to talk about. So I'm going to I'm not going to go too far into the articles because I figured that would take way too long, probably. But I'm going to more or less be the headline guy and give you 4 headlines this week that should qualify and classify as whoopsies.
Whoopsies. Yep,
whoopsies of the week. Cool whip. Cool whip.
Cool whip.
Cool.
No, you gotta do it like the Jews do.
Well, no, I was going back to Family Guy, where they had that whole episode. Okay.
They also did it on Hot Rod. Remember Hot Rod? As if,
yes.
Like I have to put the emphasis on the second word.
Hot Rod. Hot Rod.
Hot Rod. It's a
Not
name,
Hot Dog. Yes.
It's a proper noun.
Dude, that's a great movie, by the way. If you just want to laugh at nonsense. So, since we're talking about science and degrees and intelligence, okay, let's go with 2 intelligence or brain-related things, all right? So, intracranial, all right? Intracranial, that means of the old dome, Tom, which I'm sure you know because you have the degree.
Oh, yeah, naturally.
But
hold on, every time you do that, I'm going to have to do... I'm going to have to make sure I switch it to my screen because I've been doing it without switching to my screen. Also, I know what intracranial means because my son had to have a intracranial cyst removed. So I do know it was a very important surgery when he was 2 years old. So thank you for drudging up really painful memories, Jerry.
Well, thank God we're about to drink again. So, intracranial infection cases are up 60-fold since the vaccines have come out. Whoopsies! Quote, but it can't be caused by the vaccines, masks, or swabs since all are, quote, safe and effective, according to the CDC. But this expert thinks it's all 3. Infectious disease docs say nothing's wrong, just ignore it. So that was an interesting thing. I mean, look, it all happened within this particular time period. Is it possible that when you're sticking COVID test swabs so far up your nose that some people have gotten brain matter damage? Yes, well, possibly. And according to a neuroscientist that this writer spoke with, the most likely cause is the vax, but the masks could also be implicated. Sinus infection that goes to the brain. She gives it 60-40 odds where 60% is the vax, 40% is the masks. And then he asked about the COVID test swab sticking up your nose, and they admitted, yes, that is a huge possibility. So that would be something to keep in mind, that intracranial infection cases have gone up 60-fold since the vaccines have rolled out. Now, again, going back to the old smarty pants study. Children born during the pandemic are almost 2 full standard deviations less intelligent than those born before. For reference, 2 standard deviations is the difference between average European IQ and average African IQ. I didn't say that. Authors believe the mask mandates and lockdowns are impairing early childhood development. Quote, our results seem to suggest that early development is impaired by the environmental conditions brought on by the pandemic. Who saw that coming? By the way, that means roughly an 8-point reduction in IQ. I would say, potentially speaking, that is a hell of a whoopsies.
That's a big old whoopsie.
Yeah, so kids are dumber and have brain problems. All right. Now, just before we switch over to the sort of comeuppance that Tom was looking for me to bring hot fire to this show. Headline, Omicron less severe even for the unvaccinated. South African study shows, holy shit, who could have seen this coming? Unvaccinated people infected with Omicron variant are less likely to fall seriously ill or require hospitalization or die compared to the previous COVID variants. And I think we could know where the rest of the article goes, comparing, let's say, the vaccinated to the not vaccinated. So that would be a major, major whoopsies on that end. So, Tom, you had said, you know, Jer, I'm a kind and gentle soul with a high degree of education. I said, yes, Tom, I know. You've mentioned that many, many times.
I do recall saying that at one point, yeah.
Usually while throwing your cape around. And at one point you said, but...
I paid good money for that cape, you know?
I understand. You have to use it, right? But I guess you said to me, in spite of that, for our audience, can we please have some comeuppance whoopsies on the list on the show? And I said, you know what, Tom? I'm going to have a hard time because I got a real soft heart here, pal, and not from myocarditis. You know, so I will do it hard in hand, okay? Now, this one goes right for you, Tom. New York Times editor, 49, dies of a heart attack one day after posting that he got his booster shot. Carlos Tejada, deputy Asia editor of New York Times, reportedly died from a heart attack one day after receiving the Moderna booster shot. According to his social media account, he had previously received 2 J&J COVID vaccine shots.
Wait a minute. 2 J&Js?
I didn't make sense to me either,
okay.
But I thought, you know what?
I was making sure I was tracking. Okay.
Yeah. And so in a July Instagram post, he had worked as he wrote, among other things, that he and his wife benefited from privilege to get the J&J vax, and he was thankful for scientists and professionals in that context. And then he also said a lot of shit about, like, well, you know, people who get them tend to have quite a swarmy little attitude about those that don't, if you get my drift.
Oh, yeah.
And his last post was double vax, Janssen fueled, Moderna boosted. Hey, Omicron, hit me with your wet snot. And then he died.
Whoopsies!
Whoopsies! And that is this week in whoopsies, or whoopsies of the week. So, Tom, that was just
review.
Whoopsies in review Or wait, we got to go with the double W's. So whoopsies and whoop view.
So you have to sound like a retarded person. I was gonna leave it up to the people in the audience if there was a title that you would prefer of the many that Jerry said.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely hit us up and let us know what that whoopsies and whoop should be called. I used to have a first sergeant who used to always talk with a wisp. He always talked like this. He said, "Stay off the friggin' grass." And he was very like Elmer Fudd, and it was very hard to not laugh anytime he was really yelling at us. You think this is funny? You think it's funny when I'm yelling at you? And you're like, well, no, first sergeant, not at all.
No, of course not.
But did you see the whoopsies thing that I was doing?
I did.
That's gonna be the new thing. Next week, maybe if I'm better prepared. I don't know why I didn't think of it beforehand, but next time, if I'm more prepared, I'll add the sound waves so that anytime something like that happens, we can have it pop in and say whoopsies every time.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
I think that would be really funny.
What game is that from?
It's from Mortal Kombat 2 and onwards.
Thank you. Yes, it was. Yes, because I've kept it since then, and it became no more appropriate in my life than having a Twitter handle and the ability to do that over and over and over and over again, as Tom had mentioned last week also. It was just funny to me after a while. And it became... Yeah. Well, because,
I liked it.
Yeah. Because people get offended. Like, there are those people on both sides of an argument or whatever that get, oh my goodness, so aggravated and on their high horses and stuff. And people are incredibly turned off by that. Well, if you just you take a position, of course, by what you're posting, right? So that's inherent. The next thing you have to do is go, okay, well, how do I want to present this? And if you just leave it as, I don't know, whoopsie. I don't know, a lot of people are dead. Whoopsie, I don't know.
Yeah,
whatever.
Downplaying it is certainly the way to go. And I remember somebody, he doesn't watch anymore. He would watch just to get attention or whatever. And he's a talented musician. I will say this about him. But Acid Drop, I think his name is like OSY is how it ends. I don't remember what the OSY stands for, but Acid Drop OZ is what I called him. He used to do a thing where he mentioned at one point, like, downplaying the really terrible atrocities of somebody by referring to it in a way that was almost like you would a child when they did something that they weren't supposed to do. They were like, oh, those Nazis, they were so wacky. That Adolf Hitler, he was really something else, huh? And if you do it like that, there's something really funny about the level of atrocity committed and the level of how silly you make it sound. Which reminds me of a really funny meme in which it was SpongeBob and Patrick lying there all dehydrated at Shell City, and it says, "We did all right for a couple of goofballs," and it said Hitler and Goebbels after World War II. I thought that was probably one of the best memes I've ever seen, but it would be unappreciated by somebody who doesn't obviously have any interest in history to know who Goebbels was. Perhaps they wouldn't know. Anyways. Right. What I did want to say is you're talking about whoopsies, and I want to talk about some of the whoopsies. We've got V is in the chat, by the way. We want to make a point to say, hey V, welcome to
V.
your old program.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We were just talking about how showing up after a coma and all of a sudden you're being dropped back into the situation again. Jerry, go ahead and say. Yeah, no, I guess. Tell him how you were saying something about like you could do his job with both arms tied behind your back or whatever it was.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did say that because at one point in the interview process, I had asked Tom, because he's seen you in person, and I said, "So Tom, what's his wingspan like? Is he a bit of a man, or is he a bit of a dripping?"
Do it, Jerry. Say what you need to say.
Or is he a bit of a dripping vagina in a baseball cap? I think is what we said at the time. No.
Well, that's what you said. I would.
No, I don't remember who. We don't remember who said what. It was a lot. So he said that his. He said the wingspan was a little bit on the shorter side. And so I said, well, that's good. I have the reach of twice that Oompa Loompa. and I could do your job without any arms and still have more arms than V. And he said, sold.
Yeah, that was the only
Sold.
reason. You know what it was that sold me on bringing Jerry onto the show was the fact that he was so confident in his ability to replace V in the horrible things. As much as I didn't like the things that he was saying about V, as much as I adamantly disagreed with the things he was saying about V, I said, you know what, he's confident as hell, and I appreciate that, but I will. And ultimately I asked him to apologize, and I said, hey, that's my friend you're talking about, how dare you.
Right.
And I said, I need you to apologize, and he said no, and I said, whatever, I'm like in a bit of a pickle and I need somebody to take, because it was like Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And I said, you know what? I need somebody. I said, if you're not going to apologize, maybe we'll work on it later. And it
was difficult too, if you remember, because you agreed to that set of circumstances, and then you realized that your channel still had a strike, so you had weeks.
Yeah, and then so I felt. And it was
really
like,
well, I already agreed. You know,
I felt really bad
but
about
V,
it at that point.
in person, face to chat. I guess thanks for thinking that you're better than Tom. You are. And, leaving him and telling him that you have a large future in the sky on jetpacks with flying cars. And he's what did you say? You told me in person. I can't remember exactly what you said about Tom. I don't want to say it. That's for me and V. That's for me and V. But listen, V,
you
in
keep
person.
Your secrets, you two.
Yeah. I'm going to keep my secrets here. But V, thank you for the opportunity. Since again, you as you said many, many times on the phone with me, I'm leaving that trash pile pieces of shit show, and I'm going to do great things. And I said, okay, well, I can't. I mean, I need an opportunity. I need a job. And
I gotta tell you, he's not wrong in the things that he said about this show. He's not wrong at all. And a lot of people in the chat are asking about intermittent fasting. Mostly said, hope the intermittent fasting is going well. Also, what is intermittent fasting? And then your face is asking, have you heard of intermittent fasting? So these are people who are certainly curious about what's going on with intermittent fasting, V. So if you could let us know in the chat. I myself have never heard of such a thing. I hope.
We need
you'll be able to fill them in on that. Go ahead, Jerry.
If you can't do it, maybe we should get Mayim Balak to talk about that. I'd imagine a neuroscientist.
Yeah, she probably would know. You would think.
Mm-hmm.
I would expect.
Or the cat lady, probably.
She would. She's not only is she play somebody brainy on TV, she's also a nutritionist in real life, and so she can tell you.
Wow.
But here's the thing. Talking about whoopsies, because we're really close to the 1 hour mark, which is half an hour longer than we're supposed to ever go, and yet we do it every week.
I was just say that hasn't happened before.
No, we were on track almost last week, I think, with Aleister Crowley of all things. But you're talking about whoopsies, and I was thinking earlier this week. I thought, we see a lot of. Here's one of the things that we see, right? We see all these athletes, these pro athletes who are going down because of myocarditis and pericarditis and other various heart issues after they've been vaccinated. We've seen these things happening, and
in real time on video.
Right. It's going on in sporting events, right? And there's a couple things that I want to talk about that. First of all, I want to ask you, because there's some people who will say, well, no, this is the norm, right? They want to say that this is the norm. Have you heard this, though, Jerry? I know you're laughing, but you've heard people say that it's normal for that to happen, right?
Not only have I heard that, but as a little side note, they're actually the ad wizards are creating commercials now, insinuating that heart attacks for children are normal.
Yeah, right.
I just want to throw that out there. Also, I don't know if you're going to touch on this, but of course, Djokovic got shipped back, and
because he won't get vaccinated,
right. And the funniest part about that, although there's the side piece that we talked about that might be good for whoopsies next week, the best part about it was that, of course, they wouldn't allow him to do it, and then I think 2 or 3 people, including a ball boy, had heart attacks or some kind of heart issue where they had to stop playing. And I think the ball boy literally just dropped. I don't know if he's even alive. So imagine you're at the Australian Open. You're sitting there in 100-degree sweltering heat in the fucking Australian summer, and you're wearing a mask and you can't breathe, and you see a female grasping her heart, falling over. The ball boy's dead. And you get a text on your phone that says Djokovic's been sent back to his country
because he's not vaccinated. Yeah,
right, exactly.
You have to make sure that you say it's because he's not vaccinated, because not only is that the truth, but it's also like it adds to the absurdity. Now you're looking out at this situation that looks like a murder scene, right? Like a crime scene. Like you've just stumbled, like you're watching a gladiator battle, when in reality it's a tennis thing.
That's right.
It's a tennis match. And, I'm thinking about these situations that we're seeing all over the place. Soccer, we're seeing tennis for God's sakes, which is like the laziest of sports. Right? Like I'm not saying
Tom, we were just talking about bowling. Come on.
Okay. I would say, okay, so tennis is like the bowling of outside.
Of real sports.
Tennis is the bowling of outside. Now, it pretty much requires, you're going hard for maybe 10 seconds, and then the ball goes out, and then you're standing there hitting the ball at the ground, getting ready to serve. For
Tom,
45
I think
seconds.
I got a better catchphrase then. Golf is okay. Here we go. Ready? Golf is the bowling of outside, while tennis is the 50-year-old sex life of sports outside. Hard for 10 minutes, bouncing your pulse on the floor,
and then hold on, and then this situation that we're in right now is the conclusion. Just a mess on the court, right? It's just a big old mess, right? A bunch of ball boys, a bunch of dead balls, and rolling all over the place, and various fluids of all kind. Now. Now, tell me this. Okay, so if this is the norm, right? Every single sport that we're seeing... This
is the new normal we didn't know was coming.
Right. We keep hearing about the new norm. If every single sport that we are watching on TV right now is resulting in on-screen live-action people dying of heart failure, if that is the norm, and hearing myocarditis, pericarditis, and heart failure in athletes is the norm. I want you to think back to any year prior to this year or last. I want you to think back and name one single athlete who died or ended their career early because of a heart condition. Just name one.
Oh, I have one.
Okay, who?
It's Reggie Lewis. He was the heir apparent.
No. Reggie Lewis, isn't that the guy who killed a bunch of pit bulls or something?
No, you're thinking of Michael Vick. First.
Okay.
Reggie Lewis. Okay.
All right, name two, Jerry. Damn it.
I'm assuming. No. Here, I got a background for it. He actually had a heart problem that was undiagnosed, that he had never gotten checked and so forth, and then he was literally the heir apparent to Larry Bird, and he had a massive heart problem. I don't know if it was a heart attack or whatever on the court, and then he died. But that was,
it was one time. So, but if I asked you to name two,
that's the only one in the history of everything.
If I asked you to name two, you wouldn't be able to, or would you be able to? Would you be able to give me another one, Jerry? Okay. Anyone in the chat? Anyone listening right now who can leave a comment?
Oh, we also have to eliminate all cocaine related.
Anybody who's listening to this show somewhere while they're at work, doing some kind of like actually necessary blue collar job that is perhaps under scrutiny, and you might have to get vaccinated, and you're like cursing your boss right now as you're welding and shit, or working the machine shop. As you're listening on your headphones, I want you to just say out loud somebody other than, what would you just say? Reggie Jackson just now?
Reggie Lewis.
Reggie Lewis. Michael Vick. Other than Michael Vick. Name one person. Just say it out loud if you can. And I want you to, if you can't say one, or if you can't say more than one even, in like some kind of fluke circumstance like Jerry just did, If you can't come up with one, I want you to understand that these people right now, who, as we're watching this situation unfold, are trying to tell you that it is normal to have a heart attack, okay? And for these athletes to overexert themselves to a point where they have a heart attack, which I get it. They are exerting themselves a great degree. And soccer players, as they said in Dogma, and I know we talked about this before the show, Jerry, but in Dogma, one of the angels says soccer is one of the toughest things next to genocide. It's the most physically intensive sport next to genocide. It's a very physically intensive sport. So if somebody dies,
that's a very poignant
soccer,
phrase right now, by the way, if you think about it.
Well, yeah, we could absolutely make a joke about it. Now, if somebody, these people are trying to say that now these athletes are dying, and that's normal. Okay. Now, this is something that's new. This has not happened. I hate to burst anybody's bubble. This is something that is new. This does not happen often. And if you look back in history, you're not going to see like the number of people who have died or have had to end their careers this month alone based off of heart conditions. You're not going to see that over the course of athleticism in its entirety. Okay.
Right.
But I want you to know that however normal they say it is, these are athletes who are giving 110% because it is their job to give 110% and physically exert themselves to a point where they would likely die otherwise if they didn't spend every day in the gym, if they didn't spend every day on some kind of like treadmill or whatever, doing some things that you look at somebody in the gym doing it and you're like, how are they doing this? Like, these are people who are physically conditioned to be, gods
top
among men, right? These are people that we pay to watch be athletic, that are dying in these athletic matches. Yes. Now imagine if all the people who were vaccinated, the same as them, would get out there and give 100%, give 90%, give 80%. Imagine some of these fat people who are vaccinated, who are complaining about their health. Imagine them hopping on the turf and then giving just even like a minuscule effort. Imagine what would happen to their hearts. If you think it's normal to see athletes dying and dropping like flies, as Hulk Hogan, as the Hulkster said, brother, if you think that that's normal, and you think it's like, if you think that that's normal, imagine your fat uncle trying to get out there and shoot some hoops with you or whatever, and then see what happens. I guarantee your fat uncle would die. And that's I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying that that's what's going to happen to your vaccinated and fat uncle when he gets out there and tries to shoot some hoops with you. Jerry, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah, dude. Well, I'm glad you brought up Hulk Hogan, because to give you a perfect juxtaposition example of, maybe the athlete who dies too young or whatever, right?
Yep.
Now, first of all, you have Hulk Hogan, who must admit,
Hollywood Hulkster,
the Hollywood Hulkster. He has to know or admit, even about himself, that he was taking probably steroids, all kinds of different amphetamines, drugs. Like, look, the point I guess I'm trying to make is, those guys, like it or not, are tossing around 300-pound bodies, like what? 45 weeks out of the year, and on top of that, if I was to throw out this person's name, I think it makes the most sense to throw this out there. Andre the Giant. Everybody knows him either from wrestling or from Obey and all that kind of stuff. Andre the Giant died.
I know him from medical science.
That's right. He was literally called the eighth wonder of the world. And Andre the Giant died, let's see, 1993 minus, let's see, when he was born in 1946. There's a point to this. He died at 47, which of course is very young. On the other hand, he was known to drink an entire bar's worth of alcohol. He was known to drink an entire village's worth of food. He was on the road God knows how many weeks out of the year in his 40s, throwing Hulk Hogan across a ring, and probably while drunk, probably while on amphetamines, probably, you understand. And only then did a guy who weighed 3,000 pounds at 7'10" die at 47. Meanwhile, we have people in the prime of their career with a 0.02% body fat convulsing in front of a goalpost that they were just defending mere moments ago, dying on the field. If you don't know that there's a major difference there, you don't know. Like, that's
these people, Jerry, you got to understand. These people, they need for the case.
Who are you calling you people?
The black people. These people, no, these people, these vaccinated folks they need that to be the case. They need it to be because, whatever. They need it to be because of some fluke. They need it to be the norm, right? Now, I do want to say this. V has said some very interesting stuff in the chat.
Yes.
He was complimenting you. I don't want to fluff your feathers or anything, but he said,
I did see that. I assume that he is wasted.
Okay. No, he's a pretty caring guy. I don't like to say that out loud, but he is. But he said there's a dude that had a heart attack during luging. I don't know if you heard about this. He said that his name was Engelbert Humperdinck. Yeah, and it's hard to pronounce or whatever. Especially, I've had a couple drinks already. But he had a heart attack during his luge and went down the ice slide just dead. So when he got to the bottom, he didn't stop. He just went flying out the tube, dead. Now, here's the interesting thing about the luge, right? If somebody could do that, now that sounds like, now I'm somebody who is kind of sports retarded. I'm not particularly interested in sports. I've not ever been interested in sports. I don't think that somebody being the most good at exercising should be somebody worthy of my time and interest. But I get it. I get that there are people who are I can recognize that there are people who are way more athletic than I am, and I appreciate that about them. And if that earns them a living, super duper, I'm cool with that. But if your sport, now the luge, what V said, it sounds like a lie, because first of all, because I know V, but also it sounds like a truth, because I could say that if somebody died during the luge, would I know? Okay, that's my question that I'm asking myself. If somebody, now I know what the luge is. I think it's a pretty interesting. I think it would be a fun sport to participate in, as long as there were certain safety precautions in place. To which it's sledding. Let's be honest. Luging is sledding, right? Under certain controlled circumstances. Now, if your sport is such that you could die during it and you can still finish in place, right? Is that really a sport? Is the luge really a sport, right?
See.
Now, as an audience member, right, now as a critic, right, I might look and I might say Engelbert Humperdinck, he did that last run like he was dead, right? I might say that because I might be able to notice that as a critic. But as a fan of the sport of luging, which I have watched Cool Runnings, right? I've seen the movie, and I have watched the Winter Olympics. I know that every luge looks exactly the same. Okay, and don't try to tell me otherwise. All right?
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Anybody who wants to challenge me in the chat, I'm curious to see your opinion. But these people, if your sport is one that you could die during and you could still put on a show for the fans, I don't consider that a sport. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Now, that is my opinion on luging. And
can I
go ahead?
I just want to, since we are a
program.
We are a fact-based show here. Okay. So I just want to make sure before we embarrass ourselves any further. I got to say, for all his kindness, I think Mr. V is throwing us under the proverbial bus, Tom. Okay. I've done my research while you were talking.
Count Rhythm says he can tell the difference between a dead loser and a living.
Well, it turns out, Tom, Engelbert Humperdinck was neither Turns out Engelbert Humperdinck is an entertainer, and he's still alive at 85. Not at all
So none of this
an
is true.
Olympic athlete who died on the luge. The only thing I could come up with was a guy named Kumarita Shashvili died on a dangerous track in a high-speed crash at 21. And that's it. That's the closest I could come up with.
Probably of myocarditis, I would venture to say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All his
But it was considered COVID, right?
Yes, well this was back in 2010, which we know was a very high COVID area. And
which year was that?
2010.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
That was a huge problem. And he was training in his home state of Jordania.
Well, that sounds like a place that they would build a dangerous luge track.
That's right. And they crashed. And he's Kumaritiashvili is dead at 21. Engelbert Humperdinck, however, is 85 years old, pretty gay, but had a wife of 56 years who's dead, while he still today is kicking.
I'm inclined to believe that Engelbert Humperdinck murdered his wife. Anytime like a man outlives his wife, I automatically assume that he murdered his wife, like Patton Oswalt. I mean,
Oswalt.
Known fact that Patton Oswalt murdered his wife. There was something else I wanted to mention about COVID before we move into the thing.
Okay.
And this is something that kind of hit me. And as I was thinking, I was reading about the witches because I'm preparing for an episode in the future. The Salem witch trials. But I was reading something, and I was reading about some of these doctors, right, back in the Salem, during the time of the Salem witch trials, 1600s. And I was like, man, these doctors, they didn't know what the fuck they were doing, right? You know, like, that's what you think when you think back to the 17th century.
Oh,
and
you're talking
earlier,
about bloodletting,
right?
you're talking about...
leeches?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. You see some of these doctors, and you're like, these doctors were just out of their minds. Like, how silly.
Tom, have you ever looked into old advertisements? Like, from even back then, they had them. I don't know if you know this.
No, please, let me know.
Yeah, and at the time, of course, there was they were scared of the old witches, right? And so something had to be done, so the village government turned to the local doctors, and they said, I think I got it. By gum, I think I've got it.
It's not how they talked back then, but
and then they came up. They had a big poster campaign on every road sign and an internet meme, and it was leeches for these beaches, and
hashtag leeches for the beaches.
Hashtag leeches for the beaches, and they caught it. They had an emoji where a woman was just burning, right? And which was against. It was not in line with the leeches, but it caught on fire, if you will. And they solved the problems of witches to this day.
Well, good. Because there's no such thing as witches now.
That's right. Well, because they all got the leeches.
Well, because they all became emojis on the Twitter hashtag. It was trending. Now, what I was going to say before you brought up that historical fact was, as I'm reading about these doctors in the 17th century, and we think back to the the plague doctors and all that shit, and I was thinking about these guys. I was like, man, what a bunch of assholes, what a bunch of idiots, right? And I'm but a mere master of divinity. I'm but that, I don't hold any kind of medical knowledge.
You only have one carpet, Tom.
Right. Now, now if I had achieved my licensing in my medical doctorate, maybe I would have two. Maybe I would have both my sons, or two of the three of my sons, get out and roll out carpets for me. But
Nice.
My medical expertise is limited to EMT school and combat lifesaver school. Very slim, like very low level shit, like basically applying boo-boos or like band-aids to boo-boos. Okay, it's come in handy as a dad, like putting band-aids on boo-boos. But that's it.
Okay.
You know, I can stop somebody from dying until somebody who is actually in the medical profession can get there. Now, I look back at 17th century doctors and before. I mean, I might even look back at 19th century doctors, and I might judge them harshly. You know, the guys who are carving off legs at the kneecap because they're just slightly below the knee because somebody got hit with a cannonball, right? You know, I might judge the bone saw doctors harshly. But I'm thinking, as I'm reading some of this stuff, I'm like, man, what will look at our current situation right now, right? Those doctors back then that were judging harshly, they were very confident in what they were doing. They thought they knew what was, and truth be told, they were. You know, nobody questioned the doctors of the time, you know, as they showed up with their, you know, their beaks filled with potpourri, right? Nobody questioned that. They were like, hey, that's just what doctors do. You know, we trust the science. Hashtag trust the science.
Trust the science.
And, you know, that was the spirit of the time, the zeitgeist, right? Now, these, now we're seeing
thank goodness
doctors.
That's changed.
Say again?
I said, thank goodness that's changed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the only thing that's changed is the mask has come off, right? And we've put on new masks. Now we've got these cloth masks or N95s that will be sent out to us for free. For free,
because no one knows math either.
Right, for free. That's why I did the quotations. Now, we look back and laugh at these very confident doctors at the time who were putting leeches on people, cutting people open so that they could bleed out the demons and the ghosts out of the people's bloodstream. We look back and laugh. How absurd. What assholes. What total idiots. You know, people like me who have very limited medical knowledge. Now, I can only imagine the people who have much better medical knowledge than me looking back and going, oh, look at these idiots. These total fools. Imagine in 300-400 years, those people looking back
here.
On Dr. Fauci, right? And I use the term doctor very loosely in that case. Dr. Fauci, or looking back on Bill Gates. You know, look at these people pushing this
well-known Dr. Bill Gates.
Yeah, well-known Dr. Bill Gates. Very respected Dr. Bill Gates. Looking back hundreds of years on Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci saying, what assholes, what total buffoons, what fools. You know, now I, as a master of divinity,
gaping, dripping wieners, am I right?
Gaping, dripping wieners, what fools. Who knows what insults will be. I look forward to hearing about that in time. You know, what the insults were said about Dr. Fauci. You know, I'm at the pearly gates and, you know, somebody shows up and like, oh, you were on that show. You had me at Bigfoot, because somebody like millions of light years away is now hearing it, but then they died while they were driving and they were listening to it. They were like, oh, you were wondering about insults in the future. Hey, here's a good one. Gaping, dripping wieners, you know, and I'm like, oh, that is a pretty good one. In fact, Jerry said that. I heard that. That was like right as I crashed. Anyways, you know, you know, these people, if I were a person, a master of divinity, right? If I were in a position where I knew my credibility and my expertise was going to be critical or criticized, critiqued, at not only at the time of it happening, but in the future, 400 years in the future, per se, or for example, I would probably make better decisions. Okay? So if I were a Dr. Fauci who totally botched an entire decade, right? You know, like a decade and a half, 1980 to 1995.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He is certainly controversial. We here at You Had Me at Bigfoot want to make sure to play both sides. We do admit there is some controversy with this doctor. However, I want to inform the audience, especially the podcast audience who cannot see whether or not Tom's face is sincere, that we are even-handed here on this topic as every other topic. And we want everybody to know that Dr. Fauci went to many, I don't even know how many, countless
Jinx.
bathhouses in search of the answer for HIV. Also, you should know, and this is leaked documents, it wasn't just dogs that he was trying to murder or whatever. He also was attempting to train monkeys to be trans in an effort to figure out
I did read that.
HIV. And so just imagine this poor motherfucker's life. You know, he gets the biggest job of his career, and there he is, night after night, in every leather bathhouse that you could possibly think of, covered in every oil and semen of every type of man beast there is out there.
Diverse.
All right.
Semen, yeah.
And then having to wake up bright and early in the morning and gain the strength to attempt to turn monkeys into trans monkeys. None of us could possibly say we have dedicated our lives to trying to fix any problem that hard. Okay?
You know, I feel a little bad about criticizing. You've made your point, Jerry, but let me say this. It's not up to me to criticize, okay? Like I said, I'm but a humble former EMT, former combat lifesaver soldier in, Baghdad at the height of the war. I am but that. Okay.
Right.
I can't speak for
You're
the
a
nurses.
humble theologian.
I am but a humble master of divinity. I as far as medical experience goes, I only know I can't speak for the nurses. I can't speak for the doctors. I can't speak for the scientists. I can't speak for
Well,
the
you should try
neurologists.
because they all have Bell's palsy and you can't understand a word they're saying.
Because they're all drooping off to one side and stroking out. I'm not a neuroscientist who plays a brainy person on TV. I can't speak for them, okay? But I will say in 400 years, I'll let those individuals know. And I was speaking to my friend Ben, who would like to remain anonymous because he doesn't like to be associated with the show. I would say his last name to fuck with him, but I won't. Just because, saying his first name is more than enough. But I did speak to him earlier, and I said this joke. Sometimes I try out jokes on him before the show. And this one seemed to land. And he said, people... like he was surprised that I thought there would be people around in 400 years. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, the AI that is responsible, and then he said and then he tries to one-up me, which I'm not going to tell his jokes because they were funnier than mine. But he one-ups me with his stuff about, they were using blood, right? And human and cocaine. Why didn't they use their cocaine and bionics to take over the AI? And I said, some of us are trying. But anyways.
Tom, since you've mentioned that, I now am picturing Wall-E just picking up endless amounts of masks and tests that don't work, and syringes. Really, I just like a Wall-E in a wetsuit. Because he's got to go to the bottom of the ocean. But we're also talking about cute Pixar. Got to put a robot in a wetsuit. Okay, so you got Wall-E in the wetsuit. He goes down to the bottom of the ocean, and he's got, the comical scuba gear on, LOL, and then he throws it off to the side and opens up his big cartoonish mouth, and it just vacuums up all of the hundreds of thousands of masks, millions upon millions of masks.
Yeah, it could be.
Which, by the way, they're turning to this whole climate change thing and why they have to lock us down and be tyrannical again. Just remember that fact about the masks basically needing hundreds and thousands of years to biodegrade at the amount that we've actually bought and thrown into the ocean when they turn to lock us down again because of climate change. Anyway, I just thought it would be really cool 400 years from now, Wally making jokes to himself, listening to a Walkman, going into the ocean, cleaning up all the debris from our fruitless endeavors of trying in vain to live up to the efforts of Fauci, who, as I must stress again, spent night after night in salacious, hedonistic bathhouses full of oil and cum just to try to train monkeys to be trans and fix the HIV problem the CIA and the government likely created themselves. What?
Sometimes the only way
Oh, God, Tom. Tom, I can't.
I've fixed it. Don't worry. You're no longer on camera. You can say what you want about the CIA, and how they created the AIDS epidemic. I do have to say this, Jerry. And by the way, yeah, you're right. You're right. Sometimes the only way to get yourself out of a situation, as Anthony Fauci said in his book, the only way out of a situation is with a good butt fucking, was a direct quote from Dr. Anthony Fauci. That's how he solved the AIDS epidemic. That's how it ends, is him saying, the only way to solve the AIDS epidemic was with a good butt fucking, and that's how I did it. And that's how his book ends. And then you're like, when you finish reading it, you're like, well, the AIDS epidemic is certainly still here. It's certainly still, there are people still with AIDS. Yeah, but now you can live with AIDS for longer, and you can spread it
with a good butt fucking.
Yeah, and you spread it to more people, and with more people. It's like when doctors or scientists back in the day used to like infect themselves with the disease so that they'd be like, so then they had like skin in the game, right? They were like, well, now I gotta cure it, right? Because I don't want to die of AIDS. Yeah. So now I gotta cure AIDS, right? So that's how come Anthony
Which is
Fauci
what Magic Johnson tried to do, forgetting that being a basketball player would not allow him the skills, you know, because he took his name Magic seriously.
Well, yeah,
and
naturally.
He thought, well, if I just fuck enough people to get AIDS, I can play basketball until it's over. And look at him now. He owns the Los Angeles Dodgers, for crying out loud.
Does he?
Yes, he does.
Pretty good.
At least in part. I don't know about the full. You know, it's a lot of work for someone with AIDS.
You know what's funny about AIDS is, you know, and here's my quote that I hope is like I'm remembered for. You know what's funny about AIDS? You know,
that's going on the thumbnail.
It used to be, yeah. That'll be my thing for the week. You know what's funny about AIDS is that, like, it's not even a death sentence anymore. You know, remember it used to be like a stigma. If you were like, so when I look at it this way, okay, you have cancer, and I would not wish that on you. I would not wish that on anybody. It's a terrible thing.
Of course.
You know, obviously I've lost some people that I love because of cancer. You have cancer. The goal is to not have cancer, right?
I agreed. Yeah.
Okay. So when somebody has cancer and they no longer have cancer, you celebrate, right? That's like, oh, you beat cancer. Good job. You beat cancer. Hey, you know,
of course.
Cake, shit like that. AIDS,
or you become a drug kingpin.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, you could end up making meth, a ton of meth or whatever. But with AIDS, rather than, you know, we haven't cured cancer, so they say, right?
Sure.
But like, you can cure cancer, right? If somebody has cancer, you can get rid of the cancer out of their body. You're like, oh, you no longer have cancer. You no longer have to. Yeah, we'll keep an eye on you, bring you in once a year or whatever. We'll do a scan. You'll make sure you don't have cancer. Okay, cool.
Right.
But somebody who doesn't have cancer should also go in and like, hey, if you have signs and symptoms of cancer, you should go in and get tested for cancer. So being in remission of cancer is kind of like beating cancer, right? You know, it's kind of like being
it's about as close as you get, sure.
Yeah, you can't get any closer than that. The only way to beat cancer or be free of cancer is to die of old age. And at that point, you're like, yay, I beat cancer. Or same thing with quitting smoking. Hey, I quit smoking. Well, what's next? Well, now you die naturally of old age. Okay, cool. You die of old age. You're like, hey, I beat my addiction to nicotine, right? So the same thing is true of that. But HIV, you get cured of HIV. You don't, because you just take a pill cocktail that costs you however much per day. I don't know what it is.
Whatever Martin Shkreli wants to charge you.
Yeah, right. And whatever they're paying to be cured of AIDS or not be sharing a viral load of AIDS and be able to survive, not, you know, you could get a cold and not die of AIDS, because that's what you die of. You die of whatever fucking gets into your system when you have your immune system already collapsed. You never really are cured of AIDS. You're never cured of HIV. You're still very contagious of HIV or AIDS. You are still very much one pill or forgetting your pills for a day away from dying of AIDS. You're never cured of AIDS. So, you know, you've got like that's what is so curious to me. Like, these people, all of a sudden they say, well, AIDS is not really a death sentence anymore. And I'm like, I hate to tell you, but it still kind of is. Because if you're not willing to foot the bill for what Big Pharma says that you're supposed to pay to survive, to continue to exist, then it very much is a death sentence. So if you're I don't know, if you're a junkie who's like going from like one needle to the next or whatever, that's a death sentence, because you're not the kind of person who's going to be able to afford the AIDS medication. If you're like the kind of disgusting human being that's running around just having promiscuous gay sex because it's a fun lifestyle, you're probably, again, not going to be able to survive AIDS or whatever, or HIV. But then you've got like people who are basketball players or famous actors like Charlie Sheen, you know, and then you've got your Magic Johnson or whatever, as far as athletes go. These people, when they get AIDS, you know, it's like, okay, whatever, no big deal. It's not a death sentence. That's what you hear. Oh, well, Magic Johnson's had AIDS since the mid-90s, right? Yeah, but he's also a millionaire, you know? Like, oh, yeah. But the junkie, or the dude who's running around, the gay guy who's running around and having promiscuous sex with gay people or whatever, that dude, that is most definitely a death sentence. So I don't want, like, you know, when you hear things like, oh, AIDS isn't a death sentence anymore. It is, unless you're a millionaire. Because the only people who are living is people who are, the only people who have AIDS and who survive, who aren't millionaires, are people who got it on the job. Right, like a nurse or a doctor or a police officer.
Oh, because then there's a lawsuit and they have to pay for all that.
Because
stuff.
Then they're gonna get the workman's comp, right? But the people who are junkies, or the people who are like flagrant homosexuals or whatever, or who are in certain lifestyles that are more at risk for AIDS and HIV or whatever, those people are absolutely, that is a death sentence. And I hope that people don't take that for granted. Anyways, Jerry, what the hell are we talking about today? Let's do our shot and let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, my goodness.
Yeah, we are way out there. Don Trout said Tom needs not only an Alcoa fedora, he needs a tinfoil cape, a Reynolds wrap. Which I agree, Don. I told Jerry that he needs to let you know that I need a tinfoil fedora, because I would absolutely wear it, and when I'm not wearing it, it would get hung up on the wall behind me. It would absolutely get. So if you do happen upon another like fedora, like if you're traveling a thrift store, I don't expect you to get a fancy one like you got for Jerry, but if you do happen upon a thrift store fedora and some tinfoil Reynolds wrap, please keep me in mind. Because I would love a tinfoil fedora. I think that's awesome. Let's talk about who's here in the chat. Jacob, welcome to the chat. Jacob is now number one. Thundercock, Mike in Manitoba, Efren Flores, somebody who has no name, Megabit, Don Trout, Mosley, Wave, Your Face, Critter Me Timbers was here. I know I saw her because I saw the meat icons on the screen, but they didn't transfer over to the chat because I think they thought that it was spam, and which I know meat is spam is a meat sort of, so maybe there's a joke to be made there. Jerry, you work on that. I'm not there. And Count Rhythm, who's had some pretty good ones, and J Dubs, I did see you there in the chat. I saw you talking in the Discord. What are we cheersing to, Jerry? Go ahead and let me know so we can do this and we can kick this chicken.
Yeah, I'm gonna say let's cheers to The Land Before Time.
The Land Before Time. Have we already let them know what we're talking about today?
Well, I remember enjoying that film as a young lad, and it was part of the Pizza Hut reading program rewards that I got. I got movie memorabilia from that, and I was just thinking about it, or it may have something to do with our show. I'm not sure.
It might. We'll see. Today we did a shot of Deveron, aged 12 years. It's a Scotch whiskey, really good actually. As far as I've been doing shots of various types of whiskey, whether it be bourbon, Scotch, or straight up whiskey. I have been doing.
Tom, while you do that, give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Hold on 1 sec.
Yeah, go for it.
All right.
I'll chill this drink here. I have been doing various types of drinks. And for my shot, and I'll tell you what, this one went a little bit smoother, actually significantly smoother than the other ones. It had a bit of a fruity taste. Let me try to describe this to you. Some of the other ones were very much like, almost like a paint thinner, a little rough, a little tough to drink. Now, granted, I do enjoy them. They are the new wave I forget what they're called. Um, delicious, but they are sharp. This one, I'll tell you what. Oftentimes, what I'll do is I'll sip this one while I smoke a cigar. I'll have a friend come over every once in a while, and we'll sit down. We'll have a scotch, and we'll have a cigar. Sometimes I'll drink this one with the frozen iced stone cubes. And man, I'll tell you what, doing the shot just now, typically, I'm telling you, I take a sip, just teensy tiny little sip just to get the taste and just enjoy it throughout my mouth. But I'll tell you that shots, sometimes they hit different than a sip, obviously, because you take a whole mouth and you take a big swallow, it hits your belly in a big drop. This one, I'll tell you what, it hit very smooth. There is an aftertaste of almost like fruits.
Okay.
Perhaps a little bit nutty, maybe a bit of peat. I can't be sure. I will say that those are some of the words that I would use to describe them. Minor peat, heavy on the fruits and nuts, delicious Scotch whiskey, even to take a shot of. But yeah, it's a delicious beverage. Let's see.
That sounds really good.
40% alcohol by volume, a little bit lower alcohol percentage, but sometimes you have to sacrifice alcohol percentage for flavor, and we certainly get that with. See, Count Rhythm is here talking about that's a scotch. I don't drink scotch. I smell it and I dip my tongue in it and dissolve dead bodies with it. All very useful things that you can do with a scotch. I like now scotch. It's definitely something that you would if you dip your tongue in it, you take a bit of a sip. It's not something that you typically like take a big old swig of. It's not like something you would mix with a Coke and make a Scotch and Coke. That's an irresponsible use of Scotch. I'm a Scotch
and
guy.
Coke.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. I mean, you could if you were ultra wealthy. Like if I was Jeff Bezos, I would definitely be getting like the fanciest scotches and mixing them with various Cokes just to taste it. But as somebody upper middle class, I typically don't like to. I don't like to waste either scotch or Cokes in that way. Jerry, what are we talking about this week? Can you make it last a whole minute?
Yeah, I think so. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a controversy afoot that we here at You Had Me at Bigfoot are now aware of in this past week. Tom hit me up and he said, Jerry, I think we have to, my finger is now on the pulse. We have to cover this controversy, and that is dinosaurs. Now, I know you might be thinking, dinosaurs? What do you mean there's a controversy? Of course they never existed. Of course the government of many different parts of the world are lying to us, and they're spending lots of money putting fake dinosaurs all over the planet, spending lots of time lying to our children. For what reason, we haven't quite understood yet, but it's clearly going to be some kind of satanic, demonic, secret society joke that's being played on all of us, and that dinosaurs, again, never truly existed. However, Tom has been on the case and believes that he's found at least 3 legitimate dinosaurs in his research. One worked for PBS from 2003 to 2012. The other worked on the A-Team from 1986 to 1987. And the other was in the Jimmy Carter administration as the Undersecretary of Agriculture from 1978 to 1978. Did not last very long.
No, I
at
remember
all.
That guy. He was.
Yeah.
I remember it actually being on the news. They often mentioned him and he had a lot of shortcomings and he had some things to work on. And I've heard since then he's done some pretty cool things within the local community. Obviously not at a national level, but in the local community, he has been a very He's been great. I'll just say that. He's been great.
Did you know that he was the first dinosaur to breastfeed?
Yeah, for 2 weeks. He's entitled to that, okay? He's entitled to 2 weeks. And granted, the economy did take a bit of a hit while he was breastfeeding his baby dinosaur. His adopted, loved baby dinosaur.
Right.
I do remember that. Let's see if we can try to whiz through this real quick because
we're a chatty catty bunch here.
Yeah, we're really close to that 11 o'clock. I remember last week, man, I was struggling. I was hurting by the end, by that final hour. Were you? I know I was.
Our
yawning,
faces, our face muscles needed. Well, they needed to ask us if we changed employment.
Yeah, it was tough.
Okay, yeah, it was a great time had by all, which is why
I liked
we are.
It, but
I had a great time. I'm not even.
I wish that you would remind me what you said leading up to just a moment ago. How did you tee me up?
Yes.
Did you tell them? Told them what we were talking.
Yes, I said there was a secret society, Illuminati, government conspiracy involving the actuality of dinosaurs all throughout the land, throughout the world.
I do remember.
However, that in your research you found 3 dinosaurs
specifically. Yeah.
Right, which was one that worked at PBS from 2002 to 2013. The other was they worked on that show. I can't remember.
Don't even worry about it. I got you, Jerry. You don't have.
Oh, you've had. Okay, good.
Yep. Nope.
Yeah.
I don't want you to put yourself. I don't want you to have to.
I mean, it's your research. I'm paraphrasing. It's
I know. So the idea is we are talking about the conspiracy that dinosaurs didn't exist. Now, this is a new conspiracy to me, right? Like, I've heard it, but I didn't know it was a real thing. Sometimes you hear of a conspiracy and you're like, I don't know if people are fucking with me or not. This is one that, like, when I first heard it, it sounds absurd, right? You're like, you grow up. I'm a child of the 80s, right? Like, I grew up knowing that dinosaurs existed, period, full stop. Like, there was no doubt in my mind. I was a product of the public schools. There was no doubt in my mind that dinosaurs existed. I never asked about what, when they lived, whatever. And I'm sure if I did, my dad would have had some interesting stories to tell me. My dad was a Methodist minister. But, I never asked about when I just assumed that they existed, and the timeline matched up with whatever it needed to match up with. Now, as I'm an adult now, obviously, you look at me, I'm a grown man. He had a beard and glasses.
He has a cape.
Yeah, well, a degree a master degree. There's people out there who believe that dinosaurs never existed. Now, do I disagree with them? I'm at a crossroads, Jerry. I don't know where you stand with this, but I myself am at the crossroads because up until this point, I just assumed that dinosaurs existed. I never questioned. I never got into the nitty gritty. I never thought about I never thought about it any further. I just thought, oh, dogs exist. It'd be like somebody coming up to you and saying, oh, here we go. Have you ever seen a duck-billed platypus in person, Jerry? Just yes or no? Okay.
No.
So would you, now we know that they exist according to what we're told, right? Like people just tell us, hey, duck-billed platypus exists. It's a mammal and it lays eggs. It's the only one. You hear that, you think, okay, cool. You hear somebody say, hey, in 1969, we put 2 men on the moon. Well, 3 men. Well, 2 men. I'm sorry, 2 men on the moon. And you think, okay, I wasn't there. I did not see it. I have not physically seen the footprints. I've not seen where the lunar landing landed. But I'm inclined to believe it because people told me to, or told me so, whatever. You get into this, once you realize you're just accepting people at their word, because
it was
of
in a
their
book. You know, they were older than you. They were being paid to teach you whatever.
Right.
Sure.
Once you get to that point where you realize, wait a minute. There's so much about this world. Do I even? How confident am I? In fact, I read about this recently. There is a population of the world, and there's a deviation of X. I forget how many people it is, but the number of people that the standard deviation is of the world population is the equivalent of the population of an entire country. And I don't remember what country it is. I want to say it's New Zealand or something, but the standard deviation of the world's population is an entire nation. So you could legitimately say that this nation doesn't exist. Okay. And you could be right, based off of statistics. Now, when you start looking at stuff like that, like, oh, hold on a second, I am believing such and such because somebody told me such and such. And most of what I know is because so-and-so told me such and such. Not necessarily because I have seen it, or I have seen the proof of it, or I've seen the no shit evidence of it that cannot be refuted. You know, once you get to a point where you realize, oh shit, most of what I know, almost everything I know, could be untrue, right?
Yes.
Once you get to that point, then you're in trouble, because then you're like, well, maybe the dinosaurs don't exist. Maybe they never existed, and maybe there's no way you can convince me that they existed. Jerry, what do you have to say about that big bomb that I just dumped on your chest? What do you say?
Well, I think that actually plays a lot into, first of all, I do remember it was the head of the CIA, I believe in the 60s or 70s, William something or other. This quote used to be the headline on my tweeter. I'm paraphrasing, but essentially it was, once the world thinks that everything they know is a lie, we've done our job. Okay? And so there's that. Then secondly, depending on whether or not you think there would be any ties or reasons to falsify a belief or drag people along into, you know, these obscure... Okay, for example, let's go two things. UFOs, right? For how many years was it denied? Little whispers, little things come out, but it was mostly underground. And now all of a sudden, when they're starving us to death, they're killing us. People are voluntarily killing themselves with an experimental drug that wouldn't pass the Nuremberg Code. And here are all these things that we're not supposed to pay attention to, right? You know, it's a little bit of wag the dog kind of, and it's just, and then here what happens? Suddenly from Trump on, there's UFOs and it's legitimate, and the fucking guy from Blink 182's got people well, frankly, after Angels and Airwaves, no, he doesn't. But
you're thinking of plus 44. No, that's Mark Hoppus, damn it.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm saying is, here's something that was universally panned, then started to Bob Lazar, Netflix produced it. Oh, Netflix that's partially owned by the Obamas. And then, yes, and then suddenly now, every time you turn around, the same places that, you know, would otherwise have scoffed at you 10 years ago for believing in that shit or anything else, now it's like, how would people react? You know, they're legitimizing it even with less proof, really, than even the dinosaurs or whatever, right? So then on the flip side of that, in a more jokey sense, you have the whole pigeons.
Yeah,
or birds aren't real.
Birds aren't real. Yeah.
Right, and the whole theory behind that, I believe, was that at in one conversation or something from his leaked tapes, because he taped himself all the time, Richard Nixon said something like he referred to putting microphones all over the place in public and kind of called them like pigeons, something or other. He was using pigeons as a metaphor, a euphemism for microphones and stuff like that. And then you have to say, well, have you ever seen a baby pigeon? And as soon as you can't answer yes, like you said, now suddenly it all starts to cascade. You know, like even with the dinosaurs, you go, well, I never really thought about it. I just thought they looked cool, and Jurassic Park was awesome, and, you know, whatever. And then you go, yeah, but what if I told you not one dinosaur skeleton that they show you anywhere is fully complete? Not a one. So what,
Not
like
even,
what?
Yeah.
Not a one. No? No. And then you start to question it, but then you also flip back to, well, of course there's not one. You think you're going to find a whole fucking body of a huge dinosaur from how many thousands of years ago?
Millions.
What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah, millions,
Based
you know.
off of
Tom, it's really, that's a whole other, but it's been actually only about like 1,000 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm a young Earth guy, so I have to be.
Yes.
I got yelled at one time.
But so, yeah, no, it's something I never really thought about. But then as soon as someone brings it up, there's just enough doubt. There's just enough where you're like, they lie to me about everything else. You know what I mean?
Why wouldn't they lie to me about something
Literally
so silly?
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for fun. I mean, you watch these videos on YouTube of like predictive programming. You know those ones where they go over like, oh, a guy's finger touched this thing on the wall and it covers the number 3. And that means the solar eclipse of the 3rd year and the Tonga volcano is going to erupt. And then within 2 years, it's going to, or within that same year, it's the Chinese Year of the Tiger. And that means China's going to take over and blah, 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 you know. And then you start seeing that shit and you go, well, I guess there are no fucking dinosaurs because I thought that guy was a goddamn lunatic trying to point out future messages in Back to the Future and Shang-Chi and the 10 Rings. And they've all started to come to fruition. So there must not be any fucking dinosaurs or pigeons or people for that matter. I don't know.
Doesn't that piss you off a little, Jerry?
What, that everything's a lie?
Just everything, yeah. Aren't you just pissed off in general?
Well, I am pissed off in general, but you know what's fascinating? Like, if you really just look at it, you go, you take everything so seriously in this world. Because you're supposed to. Right?
Well, you're an adult.
It's serious. Well, it's serious.
Grow up.
No, when you sit in school and they're trying to tell you about dinosaurs and you go...
They're training you to be a grown-up.
Yeah, and you go, how come you never seen a velociraptor go to the bathroom? Because the P is silent.
Well, the velociraptor is not spelled with a silent P.
Shut up.
You're thinking of the pterodactyl. I pronounce the P in the pterodactyl because I have seen a pterodactyl P.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's exactly.
And you
like
still
you would
question
imagine
if they exist?
I did, yeah. Well,
Wow.
you know, you never know. Like with the human brain, you're talking about an organ that is merely a piece of meat with electricity running through it. Okay,
That's
if we
right.
want to,
Yeah.
if we want to like break it down to what it really is, the human brain is nothing more than a piece of meat with electricity passing through it. So if you wonder why sometimes you're confused about one thing or another, or maybe you're doing something that you think otherwise you think you should be doing something else, it's just a piece of meat with electricity running through it. So give your brain
So check. So you're saying
give it a
check to
break.
see if you paid the electric bill.
Yeah, hopefully that's the case. Hopefully you're not you're not crawling with harmless spike proteins. Here's the thing. I want to say this about let me burn through some of this stuff about the dinosaurs, because there's a big thing about. I hate that I have to do this, but I started when I was doing the research. I try to limit my research to about 8 to 8 hours. You know, no more than 8 hours, no less than 8 hours. Like on the dot. As soon as I hit 8 hours, I'm like, I'm done.
That's it.
But not
Pencils
a
down.
second before.
Sorry.
Not a second before will I end. While I was doing it, I realized that I was taking up the wrong argument. My purpose in this is to try to convince you that dinosaurs didn't exist, because this episode is that dinosaurs don't exist. And I am trying to convince you that of the conspiracy that dinosaurs aren't real. And I realized at like 7 hours and 30 that I had done the research proving that like the biblical account of dinosaurs. So I had to rush through and determine I had to come up with an argument that dinosaurs aren't real. And so what I did was I just did a bunch of research about what plays into the idea that dinosaurs aren't real, and why people believe, or what their reasons are for it. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll go through that, and then I'll explain why dinosaurs
are real
based off of the biblical account. So like those of us, I know we have a lot of Christian followers, a lot of Orthodox Christian followers, a lot of various denominations of Christian followers. So people who are curious about the young Earth theory and how dinosaurs could coexist and what the biblical account of dinosaurs is, I went ahead and did that research, and I in fact used a little bit of my knowledge of the Greek language and the Hebrew language in order to determine that. So, but what I will do first is I will say that dinosaurs aren't real, okay? And that the discussion kicked off in June 2015. And if you look up the increase in searches on Google about dinosaurs being real, it was in June 2015, which coincided with the release of the film Jurassic World, okay? Because people all of a sudden saw the movie Jurassic World, and they thought, hold on, were dinosaurs real, right? Like, hold up. Yeah, that was their thing. Now, the reason for doubting dinosaurs and the existence of dinosaurs, what started this, now when people were like trying to figure out like, okay, if dinosaurs weren't real, why don't I believe that dinosaurs are real? Okay. One of the big reasons was Christianity, and the Bible was the top reason. Dragons, parenthetically, like in the Bible, mythological beasts, parenthetically, like dragons. And then doubt that there was an asteroid extinction event, which was like the bottom of the barrel. Like so for the people who were like, oh, dinosaurs didn't exist, the bottom of those people were like, well, there was no extinction event. Like, that you're scraping the barrel for like people who people who were like, they want to believe that dinosaurs didn't exist, but they didn't know why they wanted to believe that. So they were like, well, there probably just wasn't an asteroid event. Some of the excuses, all right. Satan planted fossils to test the faith of Christians.
Yes, I've remembered that one.
This is a popular reason. Now, here's one thing I will say as I was doing the research on this. The more, and this is not necessarily just applicable to this applies to just about anything, and I hope that you'll be able to appreciate it once I say it. The more condescendingly somebody says or describes a belief, the more likely I personally am willing to just be like, well, hold on now. Let me hear this out. So like when people are like, and then you've got the fucking flat earthers who think that the earth is shaped like a donut and they like to fuck their cousins in Alabama. You know, you've got these people who are very condescending with that. Instead of being like, well, you have to understand that the flat earthers come from a position in which they believe that based on the position, the position of the sun, and you know, like instead of describing it as such, they instead resort to the flat earthers like to fuck their cousins and because their uncle is their dad too. You know, as soon as they do that, I start to wonder. I'm like, well, maybe there's something to this, okay? And so the more suspicious I am, the more condescending they are, the more suspicious I am. Especially when I read the articles and they're super unprofessional. And some of the articles that I read regarding,
it's literally in the New York Times or something. They're like this bunch of fucking idiots,
right?
Like
and that's what you'll see. And when you see that, and when you can read the Vice column, and they immediately start with these fucking numbskulls, these Nimrods, these total butt fuckers. You know, as soon as they start out the article with that, you can automatically go, well, hold on, there might be something to this. Okay?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what made me think. I started out thinking, okay, well, the dinosaurs obviously fucking existed. But then as soon as I start reading these articles, and not one of them is like, well, you know, you got to give these guys some credit. Because from a scientific perspective, you know, not a one of them started like that. Every
Right.
single article that you pull up about people who think that dinosaurs never existed starts out with these butt fucking New Mexicans, right? You know, it starts out with something really offensive and derogatory about the people who believe it. That's how these all started. And so when you see these fucking idiots believed that Satan, an imaginary fictitious character, planted fossils, he had nothing better to do than to test the faith of these stupid, backwoods, conservative, Trump-supporting, anti-vax, Kentucky Christians. You know, that's how they start. And if you can look at an article and see that, you can go ahead and just assume that there might be a nugget of truth behind the theory. They said also that Masons, and you won't see until later in the list that there might be something to it. They bury those so that they can be like, well, no. I talked about the legitimate things that they had to say, but
that's always what they do. You know, like even if
with the shit that doesn't make sense, right?
Oh yeah, well it's like right now, right? They'll maybe point. I just saw an article where some quote unquote anti-jabber over in the Czech Republic chose not to get vaxxed and decided instead to do everything in their power to get sick. You know, so that way they had the immunity thing and didn't have to get the jab, and then they died.
Yeah. Fucking idiot. Total idiot. Total moron.
Right. And that's even like, I don't want to say legitimate, but it's legitimate at least compared to other stories you see of other people that they try to put out in the front. You know, it's always like, if you remember, and I don't care which side, I'm just picking one out of a hat right here. Like if you say with the Trump supporter thing, they'll find the guy in the complete thin blue line American flag jumpsuit, you know, riding around on a pickup truck or whatever, you know.
With an American flag and a "Let's Go Brandon" flag. Yeah.
Oh no, the Confederate flag first of all. Then there's the Let's Go Brandon or you know whatever, and then they just they'll be the ones who can't articulate because they've been there, like they've been driving their Bigfoot tire truck around for 4 hours before the event even happened or whatever, and they pick that person out to try to articulate why people whatever at the time believed in Trump, now believe in it, whatever it is, or they'll pick out the dumb jock who watches Joe Rogan and goes, "Ivermectin, I'll take a horse tranquilizer, I don't give a fuck," and you go, this is, and this is what they'll do to every subject. So then, and again, I said it myself in this topic of conversation. I said, fucking Tom DeLonge is the leading expert.
Yeah.
On UFO research. Suddenly.
It's controlled opposition, Jerry.
Right.
Now, this is what they do. And like you said, they pick the idiots to front load into the stories. They're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of people who have taken ivermectin and who for 2 years have not even gotten COVID. Case in point, myself. And I take the horse paste. It's a pill that was prescribed me by a doctor of a medicine that's designed for humans, right? They don't talk about us. They talk about the guy who went to Farm and Fleet and bought horse paste and injected it into their anus, right?
Yeah.
And they talk about the hydroxychloroquine guy who eats fish tank cleaner because it has hydroxychloroquine. They don't talk about the guys who took hydroxychloroquine, the actual medicine, human medicine.
Well, do you remember this
for humans that was prescribed by a human doctor for a human? They don't talk about those. They talk about the silly guy, like you said, the controlled opposition, Tom DeLonge, the lead singer of Blink-182, whose greatest contribution to the world is all the small things. That's who they're like bringing to the front of the. Because then you're like, Tom DeLonge, oh, Blink-182, yeah, he's the guy who sang about fucking underage girls in multiple songs of Blink-182 in the 1990s. Right. That's who you're talking about is bringing stuff, which I think Tom DeLonge, frankly, I think he's a bullshit artist who was a talented musician in the 90s, who was
started
no
to fade
longer
and went into some other,
right.
you know.
And hey,
Yeah.
he needed something.
Here's
he
a
was
grift.
interested in aliens, and now he's not contributed an iota of useful information to the alien community, because I challenge you, anybody out there who is listening to the podcast, anybody who's watching the live stream right now who is listening to the podcast while they're working their blue collar job, concerned about whether or not they're going to be able to have a job in the coming weeks because of the vaccine mandate that for some reason Carhartt is keeping and Starbucks is not. Those of you who are listening on your headphones, I challenge you to send me an email of an instance in which Tom DeLonge, our, guy in the know, who is a friend of fucking John Podesta of all things, and who is in the Podesta emails, I challenge you to provide me with anything that he has said that has been useful in the pursuit of knowledge about aliens. I mean, the guy, 100% of the time that I have consulted anything that he's had to say is saying, hey, we've got something big coming out on Monday. And then on Monday, he says, hey, the new Angels and Airwaves thing, I'm excited to say, is dropping here pretty soon. And the new Blink-182 album, which I'm not even a part of, but Matt Skiba is, he took my place. And Mark Hoppus, my bud, and Travis Barker, they're doing big things. And I personally, in my pursuit of aliens, have come up with Bupkis. However, I wish, the stuff that I do know, I wish I could tell you, but I can't. But know that there's big things going on, and I hope to tell you about in the future, and I hope that you'll buy my new Angels and Airwaves album. That's what we're getting from Tom DeLonge. And if you have anything else beyond that, I hope that you will tell me. Because I, as a avid follower of the paranormal, especially aliens and shit, have not seen anything. But Jerry, please tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, and say what you're saying, what you'd like to say.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I do want to correct you slightly. We have figured out, after his appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast and his 77-part series on Nat Geo, or whatever the fuck that was, we now know that aliens were the first beings to ever have lip rings on the side of the mouth.
Don't tell me that. I have higher expectations of aliens than I do of Tom DeLonge.
See, here's the thing. For them, it was a hook to their oxygen tanks and different other tanks that they would have to wear to go to other planets on which they could not breathe. Tom DeLonge saw them, and he said, why did I put that on my wiener first? And then took it off of his wiener,
you know what
plugged
he actually
it in.
said, Jerry? I know that he didn't say that. I know what he really said. What he really said is...
Oh my God, there's a controversy here on the show. Okay.
I got to tell you, I have it written down here. As a matter of fact,
okay.
It's here in my notes.
You do write it down, yeah.
The quote, when he discovered that aliens did have the lip ring right here, and he said, he didn't say, I know the popular consensus is, why did I put this on my wiener and not my whip? It was actually all the small things true care, truth brings. I'll take one lift, your ride, best trip. All day, all know. Do you remember the rest of it? I don't remember the lyrics.
I don't.
I listened to it all. I listened to it on Pop 2K a lot, but no, those were the lyrics.
Wow. Yes.
It was not. I don't know why I put this on my wiener, which is the popular consensus. What else do you got about Tom DeLonge? Do you want to shit on Tom DeLonge some more? Or
I didn't want to shit on Tom DeLonge, but I did want to point out yet another. Well, here's the thing. You had mentioned again the alternatives, right? And I remember at the time, there was. Does anybody in the chat remember there was literally during the Trump era a doctor from Africa who was talking about the alternatives to the vax or ways to help, or I think it was hydroxychloroquine. If you remember, there was, I don't remember her name, but there was an African doctor, a lady doctor from, again, this was when Trump was still in office or whatever, and she was promoting the virtues of ivermectin. No, it was the hydrochloroquine. And then it turned out she was also like into, I think, some kind of Christian voodoo mix, something or other. I don't remember exactly. Okay, Thundercock, listen, that's hilarious, but I don't think it was Malik Obama. um, but no, there was that lady, and she was like, it was of course that very funny, tough position where like, people who don't think certain other people could do anything wrong had to somehow criticize that person, but also not be so harsh as they wanted to be because, she didn't look like Tom, for example. Tom, what I was saying, do you remember the lady?
I forgot to turn the mute off, so I'm over here like knocking...
clink, 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 clink,
yeah,
clink, clink,
like I'm
clink.
knocking ice cubes into the thing with my headphones off, like a total asshole, like a total Tom DeLonge. Go ahead.
Do you remember? Maybe you could help me with this. I was bringing up the whole like, bring out the weird person to delegitimize something.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned
that's the point that I was making about on the topic. So yeah.
Yes, and to kind of wrap it all together, Velasa wrapped it all together. There was that woman during the Trump era. She was the African doctor, but she talked like yes, and she was talking about She basically came off as like Miss Cleo.
Yeah, I have a thing about her. Like I have a picture of her on the Discord, as it were. She's
there you go.
She's one of the icons that you can search up. Yeah.
See, and so I was reminding the audience, hey, don't forget that the first person other than Trump that they threw out there, if I remember correctly, was that lady. And of course, it was this perfect storm on Twitter kind of situation because she was African, let alone black, so the left couldn't go after her as strongly as they wish they could because of her statuses. And then, but of course, it was still joke. It was sort of still absurd. And then it turned out all those videos came out. Like she was trolling people. It was amazing. And then suddenly all the videos came out of like demon semen and different other things. Yeah, and you just went, oh, son of a bitch. COVID. Yeah, it's like, oh, son of a bitch. It's like, it was funny enough to just stop at the whole, oh, a black African woman doctor says that hydrochloroquine's fine. What are you going to do about that? And they were like, I don't know, watch her video on demon semen. And it's like, motherfucker, So that was, I think, the quintessential one. And as I tried to correct again, I want to say, because we are a truth-based show here,
yes,
our fan Thundercock had guessed incorrectly Malik Obama, and I want to say
no, that's a different guy. That's Barack Obama's stepbrother, half brother. Stepbrother?
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, half brother. It's a half. He's a half brother.
Sure.
He is Obama's dad's other son. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
is that like The Other Sister with Juliette Lewis?
Different film, I think.
Different type of okay. Yeah, different subject matter as well.
Yeah. So, anyways, the controlled opposition, you'll see it, right. And the more, and I know, like, I'm not going to question the viewership and the audience or whatever, but I know that as you're seeing this stuff unfold, you're like immediately questioning, like, oh, well, hold on, that sounds like bullshit, right? So, like, recently, I think this past week actually, something came out where they said, no, drinking your own urine is a cure, or no, drinking urine is a cure for COVID or a preventative for COVID, right? Mm-hmm. And that was this thing that they were pushing, and not a single person who is not vaccinated believed that. Okay, so like any of us, I looked at it and I said, drinking your own urine or drinking urine, come on now, who's believing that? And the only people that you would see, I never saw a single person saying, oh, hey, you need to be drinking your own urine because it's a cure, right. It's a preventative for COVID. Right. Never once did I see that. The only things that I saw were people saying, I can't believe that these anti-vaxxers think that you should drink your own urine. Like, I saw the guy who said, hey, drinking urine is like a great way to prevent COVID or whatever. I saw the video of that guy, and that guy immediately was suspicious to me when I saw him. And I never
Tom.
once saw anybody else saying, oh, I totally agree with Dr. So-and-so, whoever this guy. You should totally
Tom,
drink your own urine.
You're saying that the suspiciously close-up video of a guy in a room without anything hanging on the wall with a distinctly strong southern drawl that came 2 years later when the narrative has finally started to hit the normies. You're telling me that when at that exact moment in the timeline, a drunkenly southern drawled man on a close-up video with nothing in the background starts going on about how drinking your own piss is going to finally put an end to all these shenanigans. You were suspicious?
You know, well, now that you say it like that, I'm...
Be a little ashamed of yourself, bud.
I am.
I'm honest.
I feel a great deal of shame. I should have gotten vaccinated a long time ago. So the Masons
With
are
urine.
using... Yeah, I should have chugged a bunch of urine and whatever. I got 1,000,001 jokes I'd love to make about drinking urine, but I'm not gonna. Because
were any of them funny
program.
enough for a piss take? Oh.
No, this is a family program. Let's burn through these real quick so we can get into the real dinosaurs, because I've like I said, I'm at the crossroads, and I think that I think I found where I'm at theologically and scientifically, Jerry.
Okay.
The Masons are using dinosaurs to subtly control society through the belief of evolution, and they needed the dinosaurs to tie together evolution because of the missing links. Now, dinosaurs serve as these missing links, okay? Right. I'm not a scientist. I don't pretend to be. But I'm just saying what I found in this condescending atheist's comments about on a Vice article, okay? Young Earth creationists believe that man and dinosaur coexisted. Now, I did watch a video about this, and this is if you go to the I'll tell you what, if you ever come to Williamsburg, Kentucky, or Williamstown, I think it's either one. It's like 30 minutes away from me. But it's part of the Creation Museum.
Creation Museum.
Owners. Yeah. Yep. If anybody ever goes to that location, the Ark or the Creation Museum, and they tell me, hey man, I'm coming to the Creation Museum, or hey man, I'm coming to the Ark, let me know. I'll meet you there, because I live 5 minutes away from the Creation Museum. I live about 30 minutes away from the Ark. But the Ark, really cool museum sort of situation. I mean, it's like a to scale Ark that you can go in and you can look at all the animals and how the setup of all the animals. It's very elaborate, and it shows you the day-to-day life. It shows you all sorts of cool stuff. I'm not going to sell tickets for them or anything, though I encourage you, if you do find yourself in Kentucky, to go to it. But if you're ever there, let me know, because I'll meet you there. I went there for the first time, I think not this past summer, but in maybe last year or whatever. And they've got an explanation for the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs, sort of like micro versus macro evolution, they did contain dinosaurs on the Ark, and their explanation for, because these asshole 14-year-old atheists who, for the first time, watch something on YouTube or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'm an atheist. I fucking, I know better than all you Christians or whatever. I've read the Bible. I've read the I don't know, what are the other holy scripts or holy books or whatever. I know better than you guys. I know that you wouldn't be able to fit 2 elephants, 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes, 2 fucking African elephants, and 2 Indian elephants, and 2 Asian elephants. I know you wouldn't be able to fit all that shit. And 2 of every type of animal, because they're thinking of like modern, all the current various species or whatever.
Right.
Not necessarily taking into account microevolution, okay? So what they do in this arc is they explain, hey man, they had one type of elephant, a male and a female elephant, probably baby elephants, because they were going to be there for a year. And by the time they parked the ark, they were able to say, get out of here, you elephants. And then they grew up and became adult elephants, and then they propagated the species. The same is true of Tyrannosaurus Rex. The same is true of the Brontosaurus or the Brachiosaurus, whatever. The same is true of all these animals. You know, all of a sudden they shooed them off the ark and they said, okay, get out of here, you baby dinosaurs. And then they went off and filled the earth or whatever. However you want to look at it. Now, the thing that I wrote down here is that when these dinosaurs... Now, here's the excuse that I hear. Okay, because people are like, well, hold up. How come 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes were released off the ark and, they didn't live like... I mean, how come we don't have various types of Tyrannosaurus Rex, like the Indian Tyrannosaurus Rex and the African Tyrannosaurus Rex and the Asian Tyrannosaurus Rex? How come we don't have that? Now, the excuse was... Now, this is a knowledgeable... I don't know the guy's name. I wish I did. I would say his name if I could remember it. But his excuse... He's a classic theologian, not like me with my master's degree. Like, this is a guy who knows his shit when it comes to the Bible. He said his excuse was, if you got off the ark, if you shoot all these animals off your ark, and you were all of a sudden you were like, well, now I'm hungry, and I need to eat meat, right? Because now humans are eating meat after the fall of man. Who are you going to hunt? His excuse was, you're going to go hunt the biggest animal that you can find so that you can feed your family, right? So Noah and his family, Shem, I forget the other kids' names or whatever. Ham is one of the names. They run out and they hunt down a T-Rex because the T-Rex hasn't gotten very far. And they're like, hunt down the T-Rex. Hunt down the fucking Brontosaurus or whatever. And then they've got meat for months, right? They salt this meat, they're good to go. They eat the fucking dinosaurs to extinction, right? That's the argument. And I agree. I think that's a pretty good argument because now I could make the counter argument, like, why would you, Noah, and your sons spend the last year tending to these giant dinosaurs only to hunt them into extinction is the moment they leave the ark, right? Why would you do that? That's one argument, is my argument to that guy who said that. Now, my argument to that argument is maybe they didn't know. Maybe they were like, well, maybe they've bred, maybe there's more in the chute. Maybe maybe we're not hunting this dinosaur to extinction. I don't know. I don't know what was going on in Noah and his son's heads. But anyways, these dinosaurs were hunted to extinction. Perhaps. Now, as far as the other dinosaurs, the T-Rexes are pretty fucking hungry. Okay? They just got off of a year-long trip on a boat being fed fruit and, whatever, scraps. Like, animals that breed quickly, like rabbits and shit. They were just fed very small morsels every day. They're ready to gorge.
Yeah, they're ravenous.
Yeah, they're very, very hungry. They get off the boat. First thing they do is eat a fucking Brontosaurus. Okay? Can you blame them? Can you blame the T-Rex for turning and its animal instincts eating the Brontosaurus right off the ramp? I can't.
No.
So, as a fellow human, can I blame Noah and Ham and Shem and his sons from taking a fucking spear and hooking the first T-Rex that he sees, thinking, that's a lot of meat, we're going to eat for days, weeks maybe, let's get this T-Rex, let's make it happen. We're on dry land finally after a year, let's make it happen. So, is that what caused the dinosaurs to go extinct? I don't know. I'm not ready to blame Noah and his sons, but that is definitely a thing. Here's another excuse. Dinosaurs still exist. They went underground when the asteroid hit, and they've evolved into humanoid creatures with cities under our very feet. How much do you know about underground, Jerry? And just whatever you got. What do you know about? How much do you know about the underground that you personally know that you could say, hey, I know what's going on underfoot? You know,
Oh,
a mile,
sure.
2 miles, 100 feet. How much do you know about what's going on down there?
Yeah. So from all the research I've done, if as soon as you go into any sort of catacombs, you will be assaulted by zombies or vampires
Checks
or
out.
vampires and zombies.
Or vampiric zombies, if I'm not mistaken.
See, I was gonna say that, but that was like, if you're already, how do you cross? You know, it
They
because if you're
drink
kind
the
of
blood of other zombies.
yeah, but if you're kind of brain dead, then you're under
Eat
control.
the brains
It's a
of
whole...
other vampires.
They use the capes, but somehow look disheveled. It doesn't. They're very vain, but also dirty. All right. So anyway, yeah, that's
They're
the most
sexy dead bodies.
They're sexy dead bodies. Hey, you want to touch my finger, my lesion, baby?
Hold on, we're not talking about the LGBTP community. Right?
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! That's right. We're talking about something more serious: dinosaurs. Yeah. So basically, I know that there are a couple things that are true. One, that if you go far enough into a catacomb, it's either zombies or vampires, or vampire zombies. Right. And secondly,
or vampire zombies,
that
yeah.
Right, and then secondly,
or
that
zombified Draculas.
And the only other thing I know is if you dig far enough, you could go to China. That was always something I was told. I don't remember why. I don't know why that was a thing. I think it was in cartoons when I was growing up, and then that, I don't know. You know,
with
but
the polar ice cap shifting and the magnetic north is always moving. It used to be you would dig to China. Now you actually dig to Australia, which, as you know, is probably worse than China.
I was going to say it may or may not be worse for you.
You may be in some serious trouble, depending on your vaccine status. But yeah, so that's one theory, is that they.
Do you play tennis?
Well, not if you play tennis, you just go back to Serbia. Dinosaurs, but they may have evolved into humanoid versions that have created cities under our very feet. Now, this takes
someone
us back
said
to
in the
beginning.
chat that they evolved to lizard people. I believe that.
That's
for sure.
the thing. That's what happened, because I mean, as we know, dinosaurs, thunder lizards, they evolved into humanoid lizards. So lizard people. Now, this goes back to our opening comments on the issue, is we don't know personally. Now,
right.
I don't know a lot of people. I know people. I know people that I trust and people that I don't trust. I trust people that I trust, and that number of people is very small.
Okay.
Now, if somebody outside of that circle were to tell me anything, I would say, okay, right on. Yeah, got it. And I would that would not become a piece of information that I trust. Let me say this. If somebody that, I don't want to say any names, but there are people in my life, even family members, that if they told me something, I would put that in a place in my mind that is, this may or may not be true. I'm not going to commit it to any kind of factual position. Then I have people, for instance, I mean, obviously, if you told me something and you said, hey, this is true, I would believe you. Sometimes I have a hard time telling whether or not you're telling the truth or telling me a lie. But if you were like, hey, no shit, this is the truth, this is a thing, or in certain contexts where I know that we're being truthful with one another, that would be one thing. You tell me something, I'm going to assume that is the irrefutable truth. If Megabit Banshee, okay, I'm just picking a name out of the chat or whatever.
Yeah.
If Megabit Banshee told me something, I would believe him, because I have no reason to not believe him. Okay. And he has not steered me wrong in the past. And he has, in fact, been very truthful to me, to a point more so, and I hate to say this, more so than most people that I know in general. I trust somebody who I met because of the show more so than I trust people who I know like personally, who I've interacted with in person. All right.
Okay.
So that should tell you about my opinion of some people. Now, if he were to tell me something and I would say, hey, that's no shit, probably the truth. If he tells me it's true, it's true. Now, if somebody I know in person told me, if some people from my church, and I hate to say this, if some people from my church were to tell me something, I might say, I don't know. I'll tell them to their face. I'll be like, okay, right on. But then, like, when I got home, I'd be like, I don't know if this is true or not.
Yeah.
Megabit Banshee told me something. I'm immediately going to commit that to, like, no shit memory. Okay.
Right.
Now, when it comes to this underground situation, underground lizard people, I don't know enough about what's going on beneath my feet to believe. There are people, again, Megabit, he's the kind of guy who's like, hey, I believe the hollow earth theory. Now, I don't know if that's something that he said that in the past. He believes in the hollow earth theory. And now, whether he said that in jest or not, I don't know. But if I'm at a point where I'm like, that's probably true. If, in fact, we're at a point where we're like flat earth, I don't know what's going on underneath us on the other side of this turtle shell that we're riding. I don't know. But when a geologist tells me that there's X feet of sediment and aquifer or whatever, when people start telling me that shit, I'm like, well, okay, this is based on what? And they're like, well, I read it in a book. I'm like, well, okay, but who wrote the book? Well, I don't know. Well, then, so you're telling me that you've not committed that information well enough to know, like, you haven't delved deep enough into that information to know whether or not you can believe it. That, to me, tells me that you're not committed enough to this. That I'll go to the guy who said something about, Count Rhythm says the flat earth is hollow, yes. But these people, they're like, I don't know where I'm going with this, man. But like these people, when they say that if they say that there's X amount of feet of aquifer and mantle and this and that and the other, and they can't tell me like who wrote it and based on what information, if they can't tell me that, I'm going to automatically assume that they're full of shit or that they don't care enough about their profession to research it. And Megabit here says, I really do believe in the hollow earth theory. So here we go. So now I'm a hollow earther because Megabit said that hollow earth is the thing. And it's so funny because, man, I'll tell you what, of the people that I respect in this world, there are so few. I can count probably on one, maybe two hands how many people I respect. Megabit's family, in general, I have to like compile Megabit's family because there's so many of them that kind of like he speaks unanimously for. But yeah, I'll tell you what, when he says something, I'm inclined to believe it to be irrefutably true.
Well, it's
go ahead.
Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead, please.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I get what you're saying. Because while I can't necessarily commit either way, right? First of all, I think there's something inherently cool to be like in the know on something no one else wants to believe, you know? Like there's something pretty cool about that.
You just want to be part of the crew.
Yeah, you're like, look, it sounds reasonable enough. I've had to make enough arguments in my life for shit to save my ass that didn't make any sense. I can make this work at a party or something, you know? And so then you go, okay, well, I can convince myself, which means I can convince other people, which means this is going to be fun, even if it doesn't work, you know? So that's that's that first part. And then secondly, you know, think of the theory, right? Like, oh, well, how could there be something down there, whatever? And it's like, well, okay, you're telling me that there's only so far we could go into the earth because of XYZ reasons. No one's ever gone all the way through. You hear about people who are just trying to dig a well and they can't go far enough. They don't have the blades when that's their only job. How do you not have the blades to do that?
Right.
What are you talking about? And then you hear about these caverns that, you know, the hellhole of Beirut or whatever that we were
I do recall
talking
that
about
being a situation.
That's right. A couple of those. Well, yeah. And the point I guess I'm getting to is, okay, if someone said, well, how do you know that the inside of your butthole is warm? You'd say, well,
yeah, you gotta like put your finger in there.
Right.
Me personally, I would put my finger in there, but I'm a curious person, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So you would say, Yeah, if someone said to you that, how do you know? You'd say, well, give me a minute, right? And, or on the faith that the thermometer works, you'd go, well, I have it on good authority from my parents that after sticking a thermometer up my bum, inside it was
98.7,
98.6 degrees or whatever it is. Yes. So then you say, okay, well, if that's the threshold we have to meet, then how can you tell me there's a fiery hot core in the middle of this earth when you can't even dig a well that I need to get water out of because of whatever, right? That would be.
Has this become you had me at Hollow Earth?
I think it had. Yeah, we're going somewhere else with this, I think.
You know what I love about Count Rhythm? He's been like hit or miss. He's been here, he's been not here for a couple weeks, and regardless, I assume he's caught up on the video chat because he was like making comments earlier that I gotta believe were, I know that he's been around. I don't know who he is. If he's in the Discord, I hope he is. I don't know who he is though in there, but he says this, and I love this comment, and I want it to be like, I wish there was a way I could make it into a shirt. I took a geology/astronomy class in college. They don't know shit. Trust me. I took a geology class in college. Like, it sounds funny, but at the same time, if somebody's like, hey man, I took a class in college, I'm inclined to believe them. If I didn't take a similar class, I'm like, well, what do you got? Talk to me. Tell me, because I didn't take that class. I didn't take a geology or astronomy class in college. You got to fill me in. And then, like, I assume if he's like, hey, man, I never took an exegetical course on the book of Isaiah. Can you, with your cape and your theological studies and your master, can you fill me in? I'll be like, yeah, what's up? Yeah, like, I'll whip my cape at him. And we'll talk about it. But like, if he's telling me I took a geology/astronomy class, which I don't know how they tie together, but it's funny that there's a professor out there who's like, hey man, I could whip together a class on geology and astronomy. And then the college is like, yeah, what's up? Yeah, do it. You're up. You can do Geo 101. It
was probably a very rocky course.
Boo! This is one of those times I wish it would have been on you so I could have gone boo, and it wouldn't have been my face saying booing you.
Oh, Tom, can I tell you
I'm
that is what my daughter, it's her favorite word at the moment, and I feel like I've earned every one that she said to me. You know what I mean?
Is it boo?
It's boo.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't do the whole peekaboo. It's just boo. So then I'll throw out one line, I'll make some jokes, and she'll just, if she's going to say anything, the response is boo. And I'm like, well, yeah.
I don't blame her. I'm with her. I'll tell you what.
I'm in the right place. And
I'm with your daughter. I begged you to come on the show, but I'm like, I'm your fucking worst critic. I'm over here booing at you. Like,
I'm glad your child is ripping your soul apart.
Meanwhile, I'm the guy who, like, in direct messages, I'm sure if you pulled them up, it's like, hey man, I think you're the funniest fucking guy I know. Can you come on the show? Because I think it would be so funny if you came on the show. So here's the other excuse. Dinosaurs are still alive and they live in the African Congo. And its name is Mokalemembe. It's a brownish gray color. It's the size of an elephant. It's got a long neck and a muscular tail like an alligator. Now, I want you to remember that later on because that's important. Also, in China, on the border of China and Laos, there's a dragon that lives in the mountains, and there's in fact video evidence of this, and I encourage you to look it up. I didn't bother downloading it, not because I don't love you guys or anything. But because I meant to download it, but then I got busy. We had to go and do Pokemon raids, and so of course I didn't have time. Now the condescending writers of the article I'm using here, while happy to talk incredible shit about them, couldn't bother to give the name of the people. This is sober Tom writing.
Oh, sure.
They couldn't bother to give the name of the person who asked these questions, but the questions were, when dinosaurs died out, how come the ones with wings didn't fly away from the infamous asteroid, or fly to an area that was further away from it that was less affected by it? Why didn't the Mosasaurus swim deeper into the ocean, or a little further east and away from the dangers of climate change, or whatever people are claiming killed off these powerful monsters? And how could prehistoric mammals survive volcanic eruptions, but the giant lizards couldn't fend for themselves? And if there were dinosaurs in the Americas, but also in Africa, how did one flaming skyrock kill them all? Now, I'm sure these are pretty reasonable questions to anybody who has like studied this sort of stuff. I'm sure these are reasonable questions, but I went ahead and researched because I myself was like, as I was reading those questions, I'm like, this condescending teenager like wrote all these. He like quoted this individual who he couldn't bother listing who the name was who asked it. I'm like, well, now I'm curious about some of these questions. I asked Google some of these questions. Who are the few
and they
animals...
said that the election was fair and balanced,
right? Yeah, all of a sudden fact checkers shut me down. Like they said the answers are changing too rapidly. So, but it said, but for instance, now I'm sure you're curious, what animals did survive, right? You know, when the asteroid hit, I did some studies about the asteroid hitting and what happened at that point, because I personally don't necessarily believe in the asteroid hitting in that circumstance or that situation or whatever. But I'm like, based off of the science, which is what I tell my oldest son, who's very inquisitive about these sort of things, I'm like, if you want to get a passing grade, these are the things that you need to know. However, if you want the right answer, here's the right answer. Here's what we believe. You know, there's a difference between what the world believes, what we believe, and what some other people in our similar faith believe. But anyways, I said, here are some things, here are the animals that supposedly survived based off of the scientific model, okay? Cockroaches, we know cockroaches survive everything. Right. Horseshoe crabs, green sea turtles, sharks, crocodiles, and bees, okay? These are, I want you to remember those, and I'll bring them up again here in a little bit. Here are extinction theories, and then we're gonna zip real quick because we're running out of time. And I have a game planned for you that I want to get to, but we're really far out. Okay, as of June 20, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about scientists not knowing what the fuck they're talking about, but being incredibly confident. Okay, so for years, as far back as we can remember, I know you're a couple years older than I am, Jerry. But as far back as we can remember, we're both kind of like on the same page that like an asteroid crashed into the Earth, killed all the dinosaurs, nuclear winter, whatever, you know, all that stuff. But as of June 29th last year, there's a new theory regarding what killed the dinosaurs. Do you know what killed the dinosaurs as of June 29th last year? Jerry, if you could guess what thing killed the dinosaurs that maybe scientists now today would say, hey, this is what killed the dinosaurs. You guys should also be concerned with this. What do you think it would be?
Global warming.
Ding, 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 ding. You just won the award. Climate change. Climate change was, as of June 29th last year, this was the new theory that killed the dinosaurs. Supposedly 10 million years. This is, and I'm glad you got that, because again, that was not planned for before the show. We were talking about spraying our shoes with bowling shoe deodorant. Not
that's the kind of prep you get here. Okay.
Supposedly 10 million years before the asteroid hit. 10 million years before the asteroid hit. Some 76 million years ago, during the Companion period, climate change started happening, which causes a declining diversity in herbivorous dinosaurs. The asteroid 66 million years ago was merely the cleanup crew that wiped out the rest of the dinosaurs. Now, the only dinosaur that they propose survived to that point was the T-Rex. They think the T-Rex was the only one that was left alive. I don't know how that would be if the T-Rex was a carnivorous animal and the only animals that were left were the where did I write it down? Doggone it. Oh, cockroaches, horseshoe crabs, green sea turtles, sharks, crocodiles, and bees. Those are not like, I don't know how a Tyrannosaurus Rex is going to get its fill off of bees. But that's the theory. Okay. I guess they figured it, if they could, they were, this is Sober Tom, by the way, writing. I guess they figured if they could rewrite history to blame climate change for a major extinction event, it might actually bother us. But 4 years before that, scientists theorized that for 50 million years prior to the extinction event, dinosaur species were going extinct in greater numbers than they were emerging. If not for the extinction event, they probably would have fizzled out anyways, is the excuse. This is like science, right? If not for the extinction event, they probably would have fizzled out anyways. It was going to happen anyhow, is the science, okay? So hashtag trust the science, Jerry. Incentives. I want you to...
I'm doing that right now.
It's just your hashtag trusting the science. I want you to, Jerry, please, if you would, indulge me.
Okay.
If I were to say that I was a firm believer in the dinosaurs never existing, what would you say? Because that's a pretty bold claim, right? Like, if you were to say, hey, these dinosaurs never fucking existed, what is the incentive for science to come together? Because, you know, we discussed this at one point on the show about NASA sending somebody to the moon. What's the incentive there? What's the incentive of there being space and space being real? And I know, gosh, I wish I remembered who it was who said it. Count Rhythm probably said that space is gay. Like, this is a thing that people say, and I think it's hilarious. Space is fake and gay is the saying, and you know,
we need more things to be fake and gay.
Right. So how do we continue to perpetuate this theory that space is real? We have NASA. Billions of dollars goes into NASA every year. What happens to that? The money goes into these black projects. There's an incentive to creating this thing and saying, hey, scientists who know that space isn't real, here's your payout. Just keep going with it. Keep saying that space is real and you don't have to do shit. What is the incentive for saying that dinosaurs are fake? Right? Like, if I were to say that, what would be my incentive to say that?
To say that it's fake, not that it's real.
That dinosaurs aren't real. That they're not real.
That they're
this
not
whole thing
real.
is bullshit. Why would that be a thing?
Okay. Well, I think some people would say the incentive is, it sounds so fantastical. It's, you know, when there's this, it's almost like, you ever heard of that celebrity theory? Like, you become the celebrity, and everybody props you up, and and your popularity grows, and you're America's sweetheart, or what have you. But then, as soon as you reach kind of like that 15 minutes and 1 second of fame, they want to find a way to crash you back down to the ground. They enjoy that. Well, dinosaurs, for the longest time, were not God-like, although in a society where God somehow is not something people believe in or whatever. If you look at dinosaurs, it was never questioned. Oh yeah, these fucking guys. You know, do you know this? They just dig in the dirt forever with very minimal tools and brushes. And did you know that they found these old big old things, right? And then you go, well, when did you learn that? Oh, I learned that at a very impressionable age, where when anybody tells me anything, I fucking believe it. Oh, right? And so, you know, no one ever questioned it. It's that thing you learn when you're not supposed to question anything, kind of thing. Well, here's that target. Take down. You know, it's like, you already know Santa isn't real. What's the next?
Jerry, come on.
Well, look,
Some
we haven't
people
gone.
don't know.
We haven't gone over that episode yet.
My 12-year-old still believes in Santa and the elf on the shelf. So come on, we gotta be careful.
Look, I'm just saying.
I've done a really good job of preserving that magic, Jerry. I don't know who's listening to this.
Okay. Well, you're right. We should have at least instead of a PG-13, it should be a PS-15, which is you have to be either post-Santa or 15 years old.
You have to be at a point. I'll tell you what, I still believe in Santa. That's my thing that I tell my kids. I say, hey, in this household, in the Miller household, we believe in Santa. Right. Because there was a period where my kids were starting to question it. I said, in this household, we still believe in Santa. And it just so happened that same year, there was a guy who I'm almost confident was a Santa, like a mall Santa or whatever, off duty. Like, I'm almost confident that he was that guy. And he was at Target. And I went up and I shook his hand and we hugged it out. And I said, and I told my kids, and it was totally off the cuff or whatever. Like, I didn't know this guy, but like, I shook his hand, hugged him. He saw the kids. He knew the deal. And, you know, he had the beard. He was a big, jolly guy, suspenders or whatever, you know. And I said, I was like, that's my friend. I said, we've talked about this. I said, Santa comes by on Christmas Eve. We visit. We have a whiskey. We have because my kids, they know that Santa and I have a whiskey. They leave a whiskey out on Christmas Eve, and I drink a whiskey on Christmas Eve as I'm wrapping presents. But you know, they knew when they saw that happen just organically in a Target or a Walmart. I think that was back when we were still shopping at Walmart or whatever, before the Black Lives Matter situation. But I went up and I shook this dude's hand. We hugged it out. I said, I was like, hey, here's the kids. The kids are here, you know, and it was around December. It was around Christmas time. And it was just perfect. It was the perfect storm. And my kids were just like awestruck. They were like, holy shit. Dad was serious. Like, he knows Santa. Like, they have met. They know each other, you know, and it was so perfect. And so my 12-year-old, he's going to be 13 this year. He still is willing to tell me that he believes in Santa. Now, I don't know that he believes in Santa still.
Right.
But he knows that once you stop believing in Santa, you stop getting presents. So he's willing to, oh man,
I'm holding out,
Dad, I saw McPeanut. McPeanut is our elf on the shelf. And now our elf on the shelf, McPeanut, who was named 10 years ago when my kids were babies. My two oldest were babies. He has brought his wife with him because his kids are now at elf college. I wrote a letter from our elf McPeanut saying that his wife was going to join him this year because their kids were at elf college and that he didn't want to leave his wife at home alone. So now there's this new elf after 10 years of Elf on the Shelf. And but they are you know, they still talk about, hey Dad, McPeanut, did you see what McPeanut did? And McPeanut, Jane, they named her Jane because they were like, you know, McPeanut's like, hey, in the North Pole, we don't really have names. She was never given a name. And since she never had a family, she needs a name, and you guys need to name her. And my kids named her Jane. So, like, McPeanut is their last name. So McPeanut, the elf, doesn't have a last name. I'm like, he must be like Cher because he's just got like one name, or Prince or whatever. I was like, so his name is McPeanut, but her name is Jane McPeanut. Anyways, yeah, but there's Christmas magic is very alive and real in the Miller household. So how dare you challenge Santa?
I'm sorry. I realize now after that long diatribe that someone's listening to this episode.
In the coming years, Jerry, you'll understand what it's like to be Santa. Now,
well, dude, I'll tell you,
it's a
listening to you now. Okay, I honestly want to apologize, not only on behalf of myself, but also everyone here in the You Had Me at Bigfoot show and community for this episode, because while I don't imagine it's as close to the heart and spirit as Santa Claus and Christmas, after hearing you get so detailed in your response to my accusation that Santa is not real, I'd imagine that there are plenty of listeners now saying, you know what? I'm not subscribed. I'm going to shut off this show because these sons of a bitches think
well, hold on. It's
that
singular
dinosaurs.
Jerry, because it was Jerry who
No.
shit on Christmas.
No. The dinosaurs now is where I'm going with this. It's the dinosaurs because we've been questioning it this whole time, and there must be tons of people at home going, I can't believe this is even in question. You know, there's so much historical data and faith.
Faith in what? Hashtag science, right?
That's it. Exactly. You know?
Jerry, I do have to say this. Mrs. Megabit has chimed in. And, yeah, Mrs. Megabit Banshee, she is also a fan of the show. And I'm a big fan of the Banshee family.
Right.
I've said this. Most of our fans are Megabit's family, extended family, right? Yes. But yeah, she said here in the we believe in the old Saint Nick, and this is Mrs. Megabit saying that. Jesus Christ, all right, Super Dave, calm down, is what the comment says. Is what Thundercock Jackson says. Let's burn through this because I want to get to the game. I really do. So the incentives, you were right. I do like the idea of paleontologists being rock stars. And I think that applies because academic paleontologists, this is what I found out, right? Academic paleontologists used to be people who their family fortunes paid for their searches into, you know, like trying to find dinosaurs and shit. Or they sold fossils to fund their research. Now, there's not a lot of money to be made, like, just at a glance. Because as I was researching, first thing I do in anything is I immediately looked for the money trail, right? Yeah. And I know you're the same way. I know you look right. Who's making money off of this? Okay. Big
Who
Paleo,
benefits?
Right? Who's making money off of dinosaurs? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out. I searched and I found the grants, because that's where you look first, yes. Right? You see where the grants are going. Now, just in one science foundation, this is if you type in who's funding Big Dino, right? Like who's funding Big Dinosaur? Who's funding dinosaur research?
I truly hope an answer comes up.
No, it's gonna say National Science Foundation gave out 88 grants between the years. So since I've been alive, okay, they've given out some 90 grants. Since 1983 to 2009, they gave out 88 grants to research dinosaurs, which came out to about $11 million. Doesn't seem like a whole lot of money, okay?
No.
But paleontologists, they make somewhere between $100,000 and $250,000 a year. Somebody's paying for that. So when I realized that, I'm like, okay.
Are they doing brain gummy commercials?
Probably. Now that's so that gets to my point. That you're beating me to my own point here. Paleontologists, they make that amount of money. Somebody's paying it. And once I saw that, I realized that the National Science Foundation is but one foundation, right? Of however many. The one that they front load, that they're like, hey, there's not a lot of money to be made in being a paleontologist. Really, there's only over the course of the last, 30 some years, we've only given out about $11 million for researching dinosaurs. And you're like, oh, that's hardly any money at all for this particular thing. But then you realize that that's just one foundation. Now the Fairweathers are going to be like, oh, $11 million, that's hardly anything at all. And they're going to move on. But those of us who are curious, we're going to say, hey, hold up. If paleontologists are making anywhere between $100,000 and $250,000 a year searching for dinosaurs, somebody's footing that bill, right? Because you can say 10 paleontologists, between 4 and 10 paleontologists,
Right.
that's $1 million, right? A year.
Well, did you know? I don't know if you found this in your research, but I will say, one of the major funding sources for paleontologists, so far as I'm aware, are rogue theme park ownership.
Now you say that as a joke,
rogue.
Jerry.
No.
You say that.
No.
No, I know.
There
I
are
know.
many. There are many.
Jurassic Park is no joking matter. I know.
There are many. What's that? I am talking about serious money being put in islands.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm having.
No. I'm tracking.
I have a
I'm with
frog
you.
in my throat. It's
Just off
having
the coast
having difficulty speaking.
of Costa Rica. It's off the coast
Yes.
of Costa Rica. Yeah.
Yes, and there are many actors and wealthy individuals who have
Jeff
promoted
Goldblum,
that. I mean, that sounds close.
Sam Neill, Sam Nell.
Okay. All right,
Helen,
it's starting
Helen Hunt.
to ring a bell.
Kind of looks like Helen.
It was Laura Dern, is I think what you mean.
but she looks like Helen Hunt a little bit.
Right? Yeah, they both look bitchy for no good reason. You know?
Like unjustifiably bitchy.
Yeah, it's like, what is your problem?
Like,
Jesus,
you're not
you know?
even pretty enough to be a bitch.
Yeah, come on.
But, yeah. So
No one on the crew has
Right.
been bothering you for your number for that long,
and
Laura.
you've got a haircut that wasn't even popular in 1993. So
Yeah, nice
but,
scrunchy, a 40-year-old bitch.
But here's speaking of 1993, tens of millions of dollars were spent on. This was the complaint of a paleontologist. 1993, tens of millions of dollars were spent on dinosaur products each year, toys, books, etc., and only $1 million, only a measly $1 million was allocated annually for research. In 1997,
So
a
it's all
T-Rex
propaganda
skeleton
versus research.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just frugal. It's being frugal and being responsible with money. Because who's really throwing money at dinosaurs, right? You know, like if you've got a budget, if you're preparing a budget on a Microsoft Excel, you're not putting dinosaurs. You're not putting that at the top of the list with like a big budget, right? You're putting that towards.
Do I have? Wait, Tom. Do I have money? Like good money?
Not really. You're looking at
shit.
like
Oh.
tens of millions of dollars. How much are you putting towards dinosaurs?
If
you've got a budget of $10 million, how much, Jerry, are you putting towards dinosaurs?
Yeah, I put, honestly, knowing what I know now, I put at least a good 9.5, you know, because
Really?
I need to
in
get
1993, 1993, what would you put there?
Yeah. Well, look, because then you're taking advantage of the Jurassic Park movement, and you could just sell all your like you put 9.5. I'll
Jerry,
put it towards.
You're not listening. In 1993, in 1993, knowing what you knew then, what would you put towards it?
Oh, 10. I mean, obviously, because then we already had.
Jerry,
proof.
I'm gonna go ahead and cut you off. You would have put $1 million towards it, and that would is what you would have put allocated annually. But in 1997, let me say this before we get to the game, because we're like way over. In 1997, a T-Rex skeleton sold for $8.3 million last year. Oh no! I'm sorry. I was like, wait, 1997 wasn't last year. In 1997, a T-Rex skeleton sold for $8.3 million, and last year one sold for $31.8 million. So T-Rex skeletons are kind of like they sell. They're hot.
Yeah,
they're hot on the market.
They're a
right
big
now.
deal.
Now the excuse is another incentive is to undermine Christianity and or make millions creating fossils, because if you can create this idea that there were such a thing as dinosaurs and that selling the dinosaur bones is good, it's kind of like, you know, what we see with the art industry, right? Like we've talked about.
I was just thinking that.
Yep, it's the same thing. If you can value a dinosaur at $31.8 million, and a billionaire in America who doesn't want to pay taxes wants to donate a T-Rex skeleton, they can write off $31.8 million, right?
Yes.
Based off of, and this is 2020 dollars, right? So, I mean,
can we also say that we should give a great deal of credit for the dinosaur industry to Hunter Biden also?
Oh, of course.
Oh, okay.
I think Hunter Biden is probably the Ian Malcolm of our time. Now, let me tell you where this. Now, this is as I was doing my research, right? I realized there were a lot of things that. There's a lot of reasons for us to believe that dinosaurs were real, right? You know, you hear this stuff. You hear in the science books, okay, well, dinosaurs are real because of blah, 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 blah. Because of carbon dating, because of fossil records, because of this, because of that. As I've come to find out, there is no dinosaur skeleton that has ever been recovered in its entirety. For the most part, dinosaur bones are found individually, right? And they say, hey, we found this fossil of a Tyrannosaurus. And you're like, oh, holy shit, where? And they're like, well, in New Mexico, we found a rib, right, of a Tyrannosaurus. And we've decided that it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Right.
In Montana, I think the most complete skeleton that they've ever found of a Tyrannosaurus Rex was only 90%. And this is after they've already kind of created what the Tyrannosaurus Rex looks like. And they did that based off of finding half of a skeleton. And not even half, but like half of a skeleton of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And then what they did was they mirrored that. And then they extended it. So, for instance, when you hear about, hey, they in the beginning, right? When we first found the Brontosaurus, I know you've heard of some controversy, Jerry, of the Brontosaurus.
Oh yeah,
hey, the Brontosaurus is a dinosaur, and then all of a sudden, in our lifetime, in yours and my lifetime, we heard, hey, the Brontosaurus wasn't real. Like, we fucked up. Right? This is the scientific narrative. Hey, we fucked up. Also, hey, the Triceratops, that's a real dinosaur. And then in our lifetime, we've heard, okay, so the Triceratops wasn't a real dinosaur. Okay, we fucked up. Okay, now, we've heard this multiple times. So we've heard stories of like, hey, Pluto's a planet. Okay, we fucked up. Pluto's not a planet. Yep. We fucked up. Okay, so we see this situation with science. When you start to look into the dinosaur records and you start to study like what we actually know about dinosaurs versus what we know based off of what we kind of like understand to be true, we start to realize that maybe the dinosaur fossil records are a little bit, maybe we're being a little pretentious when we talk about dinosaurs. If I want to use the word pretentious, and I think that's the word that I want to use, but I'm a little drunk at this time. But these as I look at the scientific records of the fossil records and stuff like that, I see that most of what we have of dinosaur fossils is based off of mirrored dinosaurs based off of portions of an entire fossil. For instance, the Brontosaurus when it was created, was like a couple neck bones or vertebrae and a rib or two. And the guy who created and named the Brontosaurus just kind of guessed the rest of it, having known the vertebrae, the couple vertebrae, and the couple ribs. Okay, and the head was not the head of a brontosaurus. It was some other animal that he was like, well, that's probably what it looked like. Okay. And this, I know it sounds like I'm making this shit up, but I encourage you to look up the history of the brontosaurus, because later they found out, they were like, well, what we thought was the brontosaurus was actually something totally different. It was called a brachiosaurus. And it was like not at all what we suspected that it would be. The same is true of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. And I'll tell you this is the origin of the dinosaur. Okay. This is no shit the origin of the dinosaur. In 1676 in England. Now, all these things that happened as far as over the course of 200 years all happened in England for some reason. You've got the whole world, right? But the only discoveries over the course of 200 years happened in England. I don't know why. Something curious that I found as I was researching. In England in 1676, Robert Plow drew a thigh bone that he believed belonged to a giant man. Now, a century and a half year later, after a dry spell, in 1822, a woman in England named Mary Ann Mentel found teeth. She found some teeth that looked like a lizard's teeth, just like a big lizard's teeth. 2 decades later, like looking back, it's just like, wow, this like all happened very fast. No. It was a century and a half, and then 2 decades, right? 2 decades later, Richard Owen of England, of course, decided that that was more than enough to start this hoax that would ultimately unleash Jurassic Park 3. May he burn in hell. He created the dinosaur, the thunder lizard. He was like, wow, these teeth and this thigh bone is enough for me to say, hey, there's like this whole other thing that we've not like even addressed yet. This dinosaur, this thunder lizard, this terrible lizard. So now, real quick before we get into the game, because we're there. Unfortunately, we can't get too in deep into it. But this guy, right? He's created this entire genus, right? This entire, it's not even a species. It's like multiple species of creatures.
Oh yeah.
The thunder lizard, dinosaurs, this thing that you as a child, like you said, like as a child, you're conditioned to believe that this is a thing. This guy, this is all based off of a guy who found a giant femur that he thought was a giant human's. And he said, wow, this is weird. Let me draw a picture of this. And he like shared it. And like some other lady found teeth of lizard. And then some guy decades later was like, holy shit, lizards, giant lizards, dinosaurs, or whatever. This is the creation of dinosaurs. If you, as somebody who doesn't believe that space is real, like if you believe in flat Earth, or if you're an atheist and you don't believe in God because you can't see, or because this or that or the other, or it's a scam because it's a means to make money, right? Religion is a means to make money. I expect that you as an atheist or you as a flat earther will also buy into the fact that dinosaurs weren't real, because as a paleontologist, there's really only the incentive to make money. Paleontology is an incentive to make money. And also it's, there's no real evidence of it. The background behind it is such bullshit. That like as I was looking at it, I'm like, man, I'm a flat earther, right? Like I'm a hollow earther now as of this episode because Megabit told me to. I'm that guy who's like, as soon as somebody tells me, hey man, there's some questionable shit going on, like as soon as somebody tells me that, I'm quick to jump on that train. But then like I want to join on with these atheists because I'm like, you guys think that it's all just a scam to make money. I expect that you'll be on with me with this dinosaurs aren't real thing. So there's some question about like, hey, dinosaurs aren't real because they're not mentioned in the Bible. Therein lies the game. Okay, so here we're gonna play this game. I'm going to make the point that dinosaurs were mentioned in the Bible. Okay, and what are we winning if you win? Let's see here. All right, just knocked over my drink, reaching for the prize. So, bear with me. The prize this week, Jerry, is this business card I received.
So cool.
From a gentleman on a subway. I don't know what it means, but I expect that you'll call this number and be admitted into some kind of contest of some sort, where you will be able to perhaps win millions of dollars. Hopefully, let's see if we can get into this before my my drink ends up
before everything
merging
short circuits.
Yeah, we gotta hurry up. Let me get my ice back into my cup here real quick, so I can pour myself another drink. So I'm looking at, as I look through the Bible, you know, the argument was that, oh, well, dinosaurs don't exist because they weren't mentioned in the Bible. I find that to be untrue, okay? And I'll tell you why. There are passages in the Bible that specifically mention things that I might consider dinosaurs, okay?
Okay.
As you know, I have a Master of Divinity, and so I have extensively studied the Bible. And one of the things that I've noticed is, hold on, let me get this. I got to get under my computer here real quick. One of the things that I noticed is there is mention of two creatures that I believe to be dinosaurs, Jerry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you those passages because the behemoth, okay, is the first creature. All right.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of the behemoth?
I mean, I've heard the term behemoth.
You've heard the term. Okay. And I get that. There is in the, what on earth is this? I don't know what that is. A picture of somebody's child is in my studio. I don't know what that's doing here. John Podesta was here earlier. I don't know what's going on. Now, the behemoth is specifically mentioned in the Bible, as well as the Leviathan. Okay.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've heard of that.
That I certainly have.
Now, in those translations, okay, you will also see some references made where they say, no. The behemoth is actually referring to this particular animal, okay? Or the Leviathan is referring to this particular animal. And so what I did was, for the purpose of this game, is I would like to read the passages, and in order to win this squid game, or I'm sorry, this game that I don't know what it is, but these business cards, this decorative craft that was made, I'm going to read off the passage, and as we go, I want you to tell me whether or not, as I'm describing the behemoth, if what I'm describing more accurately describes a hippopotamus, as some have purported it to mean, the behemoth, and likewise the Leviathan, if I'm referring to a Leviathan or perhaps a crocodile, as some translations have described it to me. Now, I refer specifically to the Book of Enoch, okay? The Book of Enoch, and I know the super fan, he was asking me earlier this week, and totally unintentionally, he was asking, we were talking about the Book of Enoch, and as it turns out this week, we would be talking in great detail about the Book of Enoch. According to the Book of Enoch, the behemoth is an unconquerable male land monster, and the Leviathan is a primeval female sea monster. Okay? Let me see if I can pull up a picture for you real quick. I did pull up some pictures here. So the behemoth. Here's a picture of the behemoth.
Wow.
Pretty gnarly looking beast, right?
Yeah,
this is what some of the virgins on on DeviantArt described it as. And I have my own opinions on this, but I'm going to read you the passage from Job, which describes the behemoth and the Leviathan. I'll read you the behemoth one first, and I'll read it to you line by line so that you can tell me, hey, he's talking about, this is God talking to Job in the passage, okay? I don't know if you've ever read this passage, but this is God describing to Job, hey, man, I created this monster, Now you tell me whether. How dare you question me? And I'll give you some context. For those of you who haven't read Job, God is yelling at Job because Job says, "God, come on! Like you've taken everything away from me. Who are you to do the blah blah blah?" And then God says, "Really? Like I'm the guy who created all this stuff." And he's like line by line describing all of his magnificent works. And for instance, he's describing the behemoth in this circumstance. Look at the behemoth, which I made along with you, and which feeds on grass like an ox. Now, does that sound like something that he's talking about? Perhaps some kind of like giant monster, perhaps a dinosaur, an herbivore dinosaur, or perhaps a hippopotamus. I'll read it again. I made with you that feeds on grass like an ox.
Well, okay. So if we're not even focusing on the grass aspect, but so much the ox, right? Mm-hmm. Then I think people may be lured into the idea that since the reference of an ox was used, that there might have been a reason for that. Like, in other words, well, I'm referencing a very similar animal in size. Yeah. But on the other hand, I'm also thinking, well, if the point in bringing up the behemoth separate from a big beast like an ox, would presumably be, well, this is a bigger animal than that, yet it eats grass like an ox, right? I think that would be the statement we're looking for. So I guess I would lean towards a bigger animal, whether that be the behemoth or not. I mean, I would need more, but I would assume bigger than an ox at least.
I think, Jerry, and I agree with you, but I also think it would be okay to say, hey, I don't think, now this is something I was thinking about earlier. I don't think that God, I think God is very deliberate in what he says. I think first and foremost, I think God is the most intelligent being in the universe. He would have to be to have created everything in the universe. I think God speaks very deliberately. And I think to assume that God is speaking lazily would be to imply that God is retarded. And I don't want to think that of God. So I think when I say that God speaks deliberately and not like a retard, I think that as I think of this particular thing, I think there's some level of like, okay, there's something maybe we're building up to, right?
I would say that, and I also want to speak to the whole, God not being a retard thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's clarify that.
No, but here's the problem, Tom. I'm gonna have to push back on you a little bit. I do remember I believe it was from the same passage actually that God had then said to Job at one point. I don't remember the context of the conversation, at what point in the conversation, but God had said something along the lines of, I whipped it from my weanal and I put it on my whip.
God did not say that.
If you remember, it was, I whipped it from my weanal and I put it on my whip.
Thinking of, and I don't know where my page went. I lost the page. Oh, there it is. You're thinking of, if I can consult my notes here.
Okay.
Wednesday,
I don't know why your
whoopsies.
notes.
Wednesday whoopsies, or perhaps the wheel wacky whoopsies, as Mike in Manitoba pointed out. The wheel wacky whoopsies.
The wheel wacky whoopsies. Huh.
That's what you're thinking of.
That's okay.
Have you seen my baseball?
Well, have you seen my baseball?
Yeah.
Have you seen my weanal?
No, that's what it was. Have you seen my weanal? So it feeds like an ox. I think that we could still be talking about perhaps a hippopotamus, because a hippopotamus is an herbivore. I think hippopotami, which is maybe the plural. I don't know. They kill more people in Africa than lions do every year.
That's true.
But anyways, with
kindness.
I continue. That's not true. We continue the passage. What strength it has in its loins, what power in the muscles of its belly. Right? What does that sound like to you? Does that sound like something else, or does that sound like maybe a hippo still? Jerry, be
Well, I
honest with
mean,
me.
yeah, I mean, look, if we're going to be on the charitable side, on the charitable hippo side, it could describe a hippo
Sure.
because hippos are, massive, strong, all that. On the
But
other
here,
hand,
while you're before you jump into that, tell me,
mhm.
what does a hippo's tail look like? Include that in whatever you're about to say.
Well, I mean, it's no more than like Eeyore's tail, if you
Right.
remember from
Very thin.
Winnie the
Yeah.
Pooh, or from the very popular GIF where it literally flaps under the pressure of its own flatulence while it's doing a
Yeah.
big old duty, if you
Yeah.
remember. This
It
is
happens.
very, yeah, very minimal, very. Blah, 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 blah.
Well, please let me. I'll say this before you jump into whatever you were about to say. The next line of that passage is, "Its tail sways like a cedar. The sinews of
Mm.
its thighs are close knit." So, specifically focusing on its tail sways like a cedar, would you say that that describes more like a hippopotamus, or would you say that more describes something else entirely?
I would say something else, but I'm also questioning why God would make an animal whose tail sways like a Jewish ritual. I don't understand
No,
that.
not a
But
satyr, silly.
oh, I'm sorry. Oh, my mistake. It was, excuse me.
Well, because God Himself is Jewish, right?
Right, yeah,
Like,
then it would, okay.
He
Yes.
created Judaism.
That's true too.
They
Yeah.
just bastardized it.
Yeah. All right. Well, then I guess I'm going to have to go with a bigger beast.
All right. Well. So here we'll continue on. Its bones are tubes of bronze. Its limbs like rods of iron. Again, we
Mm.
could reasonably say that its bones are iron. Like, I'm not breaking a hippopotamus's limbs.
No, but
Um,
they look fat, Tom.
they do, but
You know?
Am I able to break that? Am I able to get in there?
Well, the thing is, if it's very early on, we don't know.
My
If I,
child, do you think I could
someone,
kill Jerry? Answer me this:
I'm just saying,
could I kill a
like,
baby hippopotamus with my bare mitts?
no, I'd imagine not.
Well, I
Yeah.
appreciate your honesty.
But it
While I
looks
would have
like it, though.
rather, while I would have rathered you have been on or been, like, inflated my ego a little bit. I
Oh,
appreciate your
sorry.
honesty.
I thought I was actually helping by saying no. That was what.
You don't think like I would have wanted to hear that I could have killed a hippo with my bare mitts? Um, that's like my wet
Yeah.
dream. That's like the sort of thing that I'm into. That's the sort of thing that I masturbate to. Um, all the wild animals play nearby, hidden among the reeds in the marsh. So some of these lines here: a raging river does not alarm it. It is secure that the Jordan should surge against its mouth. Can anyone capture it by the eyes, or trap, or pierce its nose? These are all things, Jerry. I'm gonna say have like there are certain keywords. Like I said, I don't think that God speaks indeliberately. I think He
Mhm.
speaks with a purpose. I don't think He says things just to say things. And therefore, there are certain things in there. I mean, everything in there applies to this creature that I'm thinking of, but
Mhm.
some of the things apply to the hippopotamus for sure. I think that
Sure,
some
yeah.
of those things for sure apply to the hippopotamus. But I think
Mhm.
every single thing that was mentioned in here, specifically the strength in its loins, the muscle of its belly, feeds on grass like an ox, tail swings like a cedar, the sinews of its thigh are close knit. The bones are tubes of bronze, limbs like iron, hidden amongst the reeds of the marsh. You know what I'm thinking of? I'm thinking of the Brachiosaurus. I'm thinking of dinosaurs. I'm thinking, I mean, like,
Mm.
look at these very explicit things that are spoken about in Job. I'm thinking of the Brachiosaurus, okay, Jerry? So
Okay. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
and also, you'll see some argument about and I wish I would have typed this into the thing so I could have bragged about my knowledge about the Hebrew language, but there is a word, the argument that the behemoth is actually very similar to the Egyptian word meaning the water ox or the hippopotamus. The behemoth is actually what it is in the original Hebrew text. Is actually behemoth. Anyways, so as you're reading through the Hebrew text or whatever, you'll see that. Now, here are the possible theories in the Bible. He's an animal of the natural world. Most often the hippopotamus, although the elephant and crocodile or the water buffalo have been suggested. He was an invention of the poet who wrote the book of Job. Or is he is a mythical chaos beast like the Leviathan. Now, who is the Leviathan, Jerry? Do you know anything about the Leviathan?
Well, the Leviathan would be, I guess, modern day standards, a giant whale.
A giant whale? A giant whale, as the Jews would say.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. That has become the translation, and we've associated Leviathan to just be like any gigantic thing in the water. Now, real quick, I'm going to burn through this stuff because it's in Job. Job specifically, if you want to look into it further, Job 41, 1 through 26. Here are some things about the Leviathan. Now, a lot of people will think that the Leviathan refers specifically to a crocodile. Like, no shit. Right. I'm not kidding. If you look in your New English or New International Version Bible, it will say possibly referring to a crocodile. If you look in various translations of the Bible, it will say the crocodile. But I want you to listen real quickly as I burn through these. Some of these things just don't apply to the crocodile. Okay.
Okay.
Can you pull in the Leviathan with a fish hook? Can you tie it down with a rope? Can you put a cord through its nose, pierce its jaw with a hook? Can you keep it begging for mercy? Will it speak to you in gentle words? Now, again, this is God speaking to Job. Will it make an agreement with you for you to take it as a slave for your life? Can you make it a pet like you would a bird, or put it on a leash for a young woman in your house? Will traders barter for it? Will they divide it amongst themselves, amongst some merchants? Can you fill its hide with harpoons? Or its head with fishing spears? Can you lay a hand on it? Or I'm sorry, if you lay a hand on it, you will remember the struggle and never do it again. And any hopes of subduing it is false. The mere sight of it is overpowering. No one is fierce enough to rouse it. Who then is able to stand against me? Who claim against me will pay. I will not fail to speak of the Leviathan's limbs, its strength, and its graceful form. Who can strip off its outer coat? Who can penetrate its double coat of armor? Who dares open the doors of its mouth, ringed about with fearsome teeth? It's backed in rows of shields tightly sealed together, each is so close to the next that no air can pass between. They're joined fast to one another, they cling together and cannot be parted. Its snorting throws out flashes of light. Now, is this something that a crocodile can do? Its snorting throws out flashes of light. Its eyes are like rays of dawn. Flames stream from its mouth. Sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke pours from its nostrils. Its breath, or as breath from boiling points over burning reeds. Its breath sets coals ablaze, and flames dart from its mouth. Strength resides in its neck. Dismay goes before it. The folds of its flesh are tightly joined. They firm and immovable. Its chest is hard as rock, hard in the lower millstone. Anyways. So you hear all this stuff. Does that sound like a crocodile to you, Jerry? Yes or no?
No.
Does that sound like a whale to you?
No.
Whale to you, Jerry? Does that sound like any creature from the sea or land, Jerry, that we know of now?
In mythos? Yeah.
Does that sound like a creature that we know now? Or does it sound perhaps like a dinosaur, Jerry?
It would sound closer to a dinosaur or a dragon, I would say.
Sure.
Or sea serpent, like a big dragon-like sea serpent. Yes, I would say that. Let me show you a
picture of the Leviathan. This is, again, some virgins from Deviant Art or whatever. They made these pictures. This is actually a picture from an old book. This one right here, this black and white one. And you can't see it in the picture, but up above it to the upper right, you can see there's actually God fighting the Leviathan, which is what's mentioned in Psalm. And actually, J-Dubs mentions that in the chat right now, that Leviathan was mentioned in Psalms, playing in the waves like a whale. And then also there's this picture.
Well, I guess if it's called playing in the waves like a whale, then it cannot be a whale, right?
Yeah, right? It's got to be something else, right? There's some stuff that I've got here. Leviathan is referred to often like Jorgen Mander of Norse mythology, the singular creature with no mate. Its tail is placed in its mouth, and it's the world snake that wraps around the world. The term dragon and draken is typically used for Leviathan in the Greek translation, Old Testament, and in Revelation. The book of Job, Leviathan is translated to sea monster or Kados in the Septuagint. There's a bunch of shit here that talks about how specifically in the Talmud, for those Jews among us and those people who believe in the Kabbalah and the Talmud, you will see there is some information amongst rabbis that discusses the Leviathan more in depth, but as you know, biblically in the Talmud and the Kabbalah and all that stuff, you will see that there is mention of dinosaurs in the biblical text in Scripture specifically. If you want to go further into it, because a lot of that text goes back into, we got to remember that a lot of it goes back to the Hebrew Bible, the Talmud, gosh, I wish I remembered what the heck it was called. But the Turkuk? No, that's not right. But the Hebrew Bible. So you have to kind of like go and listen to some of these rabbis. And I know a lot of you don't want to listen to rabbis. But all that with the anti-Semitism that started out this episode. But yeah, a lot of them do want to talk about some of the Hebrew language that comes with it. And a lot of the Hebrew language that is tied to the original text, the Hebrew Bible, in Hebrew specifically, the exegetical text. I've got it right here actually. Babylonian Talmud, the Baba Bathra, the exegetical commentary of the Torah, Jewish liturgical poems. A lot of the stuff you're going to see a lot more information about the Leviathan, and you're going to be able to see the connection between that and what we as Christians associate to be the consider the Old Testament. You can better understand who the Leviathan is. And if you question or wonder who the dinosaurs were, you can understand it that way. You have to obviously dig into the Old Testament a little bit deeper. But with that being said, Jerry, do you have anything that you wanted to add to that? I know I kind of like I rambled, but I was trying to burn through that game. I wanted to see you.
It's okay.
You congratulations, you won the.
Thank you.
Whatever it was that you were competing for.
I won a new business card.
That's right.
Yes. No, I thought that this was. I think it's really interesting actually because there's something to be said for. Even if there are mentions of dinosaur-like beasts in the Bible, that doesn't even necessarily mean that what we know today as dinosaurs and what they're trying to sell us as dinosaurs are real either, right? So it could be that there were these beasts that were mentioned and yet somehow never found. It could also be that there are these other ones. I mean, why make mention of just two, right? Like if you're having these conversations, I'm going to make mention of just these two, but not the other 3,000 that I made that torture you and all of your friends all day long.
You know what, Harry? And there's an answer for that. If I were God and I were speaking to Job, who was being a kind of an obnoxious pain in the butt, really, like if you've read Job, and I know that you know of Job, right?
Yes.
Job was kind of being whiny, right? You know, now granted, he had lost everything. So like in his position, would I have been any different? Probably not. But Job was being a little whiny. And God, an eternal being, granted, but also like he's got stuff to do. And he's you know, he's not going to sit there and he's not going to rattle off every, hey, I'm the guy who created this. I created that. I created this. I created that. I created this. I created that. And forever, for ad infinitum, right? You know, I'm not going to sit there and list off every magnificent thing that I've created as God. Because I can say, hey, Job, look around, right? I created it all. But let me tell you about some of my most, the things that I take the most pride in. You know, and he says, the Leviathan, sea creature, huge, amazing, beautiful, terrifying. You know, like people are just like inspired by this. They see it and they're like, holy cow, that is an awesome creature. Behemoth, huge, amazing, elaborate. You know, people see it. They're like, wow. You know, like I'm listing off just a couple of my things. I'm not going to say behemoth, elephant, giraffe, hippopotamus, you know, and then list off all the attributes of each one. And even if he did, Job is not going to say, and then God said the hippopotamus. And then God said this. And then God said that. And then God said the giraffe. And then he pointed out that the giraffe had a super long neck. And then he pointed out how amazing the giraffe's horns were. You know, and then he said, also I made the elephant. And then he pointed out how amazing the tusks were. You know, so like whether it was God listed everything or whether or not God or Job wrote everything, you know, there is something to be said about like, okay, these are the only two that he listed because, well, one's in the water, one's on land. These are like the two most extravagant of whatever. That's my opinion on the matter.
And it also does push the distinction because again, like you said, if they were animals on the relative same level as other animals that exist. In other words, why bring up the hippopotamus if the elephant would be just as easily brought up? Another, you know, or like even to say the ox or whatever. It's like, well, the ox is a pretty big beast. Like it's not. Yeah, I mean, it would be worth mentioning on its own. So to then say something is so much more impressive than that, then you would have to imagine there's a reason for bringing it up. You don't just, you know, like, yeah, the big toe's bigger than my pinky toe, but no one's bringing up toes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, if everyone was going to go, oh, yeah, well, here's what I'm going to share about how awesome I am today, no one's going to be making mention of the toes. And so, yeah, I guess long story short, if you're going to make mention, I doubt that they, at the very least, I doubt it was an alligator and a hippopotamus because it makes no sense to distinguish them from the animals at which he was comparing. It makes no sense.
Right. There's some understanding, Job, and Jacob and J-Dubs mentioned it in the chat, is like Job was probably familiar with bigger animals. So for him to say, it was the hippopotamus or the crocodile. Hippopotamus and the crocodile are pretty, like, gnarly animals. Like, if you saw one in person, you're like, oh, well, that's a pretty cool animal. You know, this is a pretty big animal. But, like, I could fight an alligator, right? Like, I'm confident in my ability as a man I could fight an alligator. So if God's like, were you there when I created the alligator? I'd be like, no, but I'm not like that impressed by the alligator God. Like if you would, if you would say, hey, were you there when I created the great white shark? I'd be like, holy shit, yeah, no, I was not. But that's a pretty scary animal, right? You know, like, or even like the killer whale or the blue whale. Like he could have mentioned anything, and I would have been like, yeah. But like if he had said, were you there when I created the alligator? I'd be like, the alligator God? You know, like, come on.
Right.
You can do better. Like, I'm not that scared of an alligator. Like, nature's the student, right? I'll just not go near an alligator. If I don't go in the areas where there are alligators, and I can't imagine Job, like a person who lived probably in the desert, was like particularly terrified of the crocodile. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know, he's probably like, well, I just won't go near crocodiles because they're not very fast, right? But you know, a hippopotamus is pretty fast, right? But
yeah,
like,
they do go
certainly a brontosaurus. Like if God was like trying to get my attention, he would say, "Hey, this gigantic, multiple ton beast that like I've created that you are aware of, like that you're impressed by." I'm not particularly impressed by a hippopotamus. You know, I'm not my wife. And I love my wife. I'm not. This is not a dig on her. But for a year, I could not hear the end of Fiona, the hippopotamus baby from the Cincinnati Zoo. Like every day, it was, oh, you're not gonna believe, you know, Fiona, the fucking hippopotamus. You know, every day it was an update on Fiona the hippopotamus. And I could care less. A hippopotamus, I get it, pretty big animal, but like if you want to impress me, you're not going to talk about a hippopotamus. You're going to talk about something, you know, bigger than a hippopotamus, because I am aware of animals that are bigger than the hippopotamus. So if God's like, "Hey, Tom, were you there when I made the hippopotamus?" I'd be like, "I'm just not that interested in the hippopotamus." You know, like, but he's going to say, "God, or Tom, were you there when I made the brontosaurus?" Right? And I'd be like, "No, I wasn't. That's a pretty damn impressive creature." Right?
Yeah.
You know, if he's trying to impress upon me now, granted, I'm impressed by his creation in general. I think it's a pretty awesome thing. I think it's an incredibly awesome thing. I think creation its entirety is pretty awesome. But if the argument is, "Hey, I want to impress upon you this," he's going to use the most impressive version of whatever. It's not going to be, "Hey, here's a hippopotamus, and I, Job, a guy who's pretty smart enough to have been selected to write part of the canonical Bible." You know, a guy, you know, I expect him to be like, "Hey, you remember when I made the brontosaurus?" "Yeah, fuck yeah, I remember when you made the brontosaurus, God. That was pretty awesome. That was a pretty doggone big animal that you created." Anyways, that's my opinion on the matter. So when people say that, no, dinosaurs aren't in the Bible, I would say consult your Bible, because there's some stuff in there that like is pretty obviously dinosaurs, or like bigger than dinosaurs, or scarier, or more impressive than dinosaurs, to where like if you are like, well, I don't know if dinosaurs existed because the Bible didn't say it. Well, did you read your Bible? Because there's some stuff that's like way tougher to wrap your head around than dinosaurs. You know. Now, did dinosaurs, as we're told to recognize them, exist? You know, I don't know. Is there something maybe more to it? Yeah, like 9/11 was probably an inside job. You know, like, do I believe that necessarily there was a terror attack on September 11th, 2001? I don't know. No, probably not. But there was this narrative created to tell me what supposedly happened. Do I believe that dinosaurs existed? No, but there's a narrative that was created that was trying to convince me that something happened. What really happened? I don't know. I've told the story before about how I feel like I was just like chastised by an angel and really chewed out. And for that reason, I am now a young earther. Do I think that the world existed, 4.3 billion years ago? No. Do I think that the world is as young as 7,000 years? I don't know. I don't think so. I think there's probably more to it than that. Do I think it matters? No, not really. I don't think it's a salvation issue. And that's something that I have to attribute to my brother-in-law, who now I can't say who he is according to the show, or in relation to the show. Fucking super fan. But he always would say, "Is this a salvation issue?" And when you say, "Is this a salvation issue?" No, okay, well then who really cares? But if it's a salvation issue, if it determines whether or not you get into heaven or not, then that's an issue. But whether or not the Earth is 7,000 years old or 4.3 billion years old, is that a salvation issue? No, not really. To me, I got chewed out in a vision / dream / visit from an angel or whoever, some kind of external visitor or whatever. Somebody visited me and chewed my ass about it. And so therefore I am like, well, I can't believe in evolution. I can't believe in the Big Bang. I have to believe in as based on what the biblical text says. But is it a salvation issue? If you believe this or that or the other, I don't really care. Do you believe that Christ died on the cross for your sins and lived he himself lived a sinless life so that he could be the sacrificial lamb so that you could be saved and live an eternal life? That's a salvation issue. Yeah. Is whether or not or however long the earth existed, is that a salvation issue? No, not really. So anyways, Jerry, what do you got? You got to shill anything? I know you got to go feed the baby.
Yeah, I got to go feed my baby. That's about the shilling I got. But, find me on Telegram. No thanks. And you have me at Bigfoot Telegram thing too now. So do that.
We moved that so that you could do your whoopsies throughout the week.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you haven't already, jump on there. It's in the Discord. If you haven't already joined it, it's like a series of events that you have to do. You have to join the Discord in order to see the Telegram thing where you can join Jerry's weekly whoopsies. Or I'm sorry, what is it called? Damn it! I wish I remember the Wednesday whoopsies or the
Wednesday whoopsies.
The Wednesday whoopsies was Megabit Banshee, and the wheel wacky whoopsies was Mike in Manitoba. You can join the wheel wacky whoopsies or the Wednesday whoopsies throughout the week on Telegram by jumping on to the Discord and finding us there. Otherwise, you can find us on Instagram. Happy to talk to you on anywhere, whether it's the Discord, whether it's the Telegram, whether it's the Instagram. We are no longer on Twitter. We are no longer on a website. We are no longer on any of that shit because Telegram is the only thing that supports any kind of free speech shit. And Discord is the only way that we can, congregate as a group and not be censored and all that cool stuff. Instagram is merely if you just want to get in touch with us and say, hey, what's up, and find us elsewhere. And also to see our you can see the pictures, the quote pics, and all that shit that we do every week. Other than that, thank you guys for joining us. Had a great time tonight. Always a great time to talk about something. Damn, we were pushing 4 hours, and God bless you guys. The 10 viewers who are still here, man. Amazing that you guys stuck it out. And we will see you guys all next week. Thank you so much.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.